Well, there goes the Daverhood. Good morning, everybody, and welcome on this Saturday morning, March 8th, 2025, to the latest brand new episode of Dave's Gone By. It's gonna be rough getting through this one because I've been getting over a cold and I'm not over it. I thought, usually I get these head colds, and I don't get them very often, maybe twice a year for the past decade or so. I'll catch something, I'll get this little bug, and then it'll hit me, and it'll be bad for about 24, maybe 48 hours. And then within a day, I have one good sleep, or I'll sleep, I'll do a schwitz, I'll probably have a temperature overnight, and then get rid of it. But this one, man, I caught it. I felt it coming on me on Tuesday, or no, maybe it was, might have been Monday when I first started to feel it a little bit. And then Wednesday, I knew I had it. Thursday, I figured it might be my big day of suffering. And Friday, either over it or a lot better. And then boom, boom, boom. Instead, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday were pretty rough. And I only woke up about an hour ago, so I'm still feeling it, I'm still in it, and I've got to get through a podcast. But I'm going to do it, because I do it for love, my friends. I do it for you. I do this show called Dave's Gone By. It is our 979th episode of the program. Here, let me take the onus off my throat for just a moment by giving you the intro.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
There goes the Daverhood.
And there was much rejoicing.
Didn't your meds kick in yet?
We got David Lefter that's here. He's a Long Island arts guy. He's got his own radio show.
I want you all to really enjoy a wonderful program done by a fine artist.
A glorious thing of unparalleled beauty.
Dave's Gone By. Dave is one of my very favorite broadcasters, so keep on listening to Mr. Dave.
That would be me. Excuse me, that would be me, Dave Lefkowitz, here on this March 8th. So, yeah, what happened, I'm pretty sure I know exactly when I got it. Because we missed our show last week. My wife and I were in New York dealing with family things and doing some other stuff. So, in New York last weekend, and it would have been, I guess, last Saturday evening, I had gone to a couple of shows, and if I'm feeling better, I might talk about them and do an Inside Broadway on them. But I went to one show that I liked quite a lot, another show I could have lived without. But one of them was at 2 o'clock, another was at 5 o'clock. I had bundled this fairly long matinee in Midtown, and I love 5 o'clock curtains. I think that's a wonderful thing that they should do more often. But my 5 o'clock was all the way into Chelsea on the east side. So I had less than half an hour, and there's always the stress and the anxiety. Am I going to make it? Because I would splurge. I would take a cab or an Uber, but there's no guarantee with traffic that you aren't better off taking the public transportation or running to get downtown. Because you can hit one block in New York, as I'm sure you know, that takes you 10 minutes just to get from the start of one avenue to the end of that avenue. So I take my chances. I time everything, and of course, this is my life. My matinee show, which is Midtown, 6th, 7th Avenue. Not only is the show 2.5 hours, meant to run that length, but because there's nudity in the show, and it's female nudity, and one or two of the women are really hot. What they do is before the show starts, they take your phone because they don't want pictures of the production and pictures of these naked women going all over the interwebs, going all over, probably won't make it on TikTok, but wherever these things will go to porn sites or something. So what they do is, and they've been doing this since Take Me Out on Broadway and some other shows, is they ask you to take your cell phone, give it to them. They put it in this pouch, like this leather felt pouch that they then seal up. It's almost like when you used to go into, I mean, you still do, when you go into clothing stores and they have this thing on them that will ring if you go through the door. So you have to get someone to unplug it at the cash register and then plug it and they hand you the garment and then you can leave. This is the opposite. They kind of put your phone into a pouch that's sealed with a thing. And now the thing is you can't leave if you want to use your cell phone. You can't get out the door because it's in this pouch. So not only do I have to wait until the show's over, a 2.5-hour show, and the applause happens, and of course, it's a theater that probably seats 200 to 300 people. It's the Laura Pell's theater, one of the roundabout stages. So you gotta wait and be courteous as people are coming up the aisle. I can't just run and zoom and find the nearest train station. I've got to be courteous. You go. No, you go. My name's not you go. Go up the aisle, and then you can't just leave. You've got to go and get your phone ready that you're afraid is falling out of your pocket because there's this giant pouch, and you're worried it's just going to fall on the floor somewhere. The nice thing is they really do it very quickly. They figured out a way to make this annoying inconvenience, but I understand is a necessary one, to make it very, very non-problematic. I mean, I think it added, honest to God, 2 minutes, tops, to the length of time when you can get out of the show and out of the theater. You're just kind of waiting. There's someone there with a little button push thingy. You hand them the thing, they go, poof. And of course, me being me, Dave Lefkowitz, mine doesn't work. The woman is standing there with the unhooking. All these other people, they've got like 5 ushers from the roundabout, and they're all working on other people. They go, here's your phone, out, here you go, out, here you go. Me, the woman is going, and I'm standing there, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm going to miss my second show today because they can't get my cell phone out of the nudity pouch. So I'm starting to crap bricks. But honest, even mine, the girl figured it out. She went, boop, out. Here's your phone. I was up the stairs and out. And I did my due diligence before I even left the house that day, was to check the nearest subway station, because I hate to be counterintuitive. I hate to go uptown in order to go downtown. There's something that goes against my grain and against my logic, that the nearest train station that I need, nearest subway, is closer to me if I go away from the direction I actually want to go than walking another 2 or 3 blocks to skip a stop and go further downtown. But I do. I literally go 2 blocks, boom, get on the train. Train comes in a reasonable time, and what do you know? I get out of the subway, and I'm now 2 blocks from the next theater I need to be out with about 10 minutes to spare. I'm just thanking my lucky stars. I'm just so unbearably happy. So unbearably happy that I'm a little disoriented, and I start walking the wrong direction down the block. Because I think, there's the numbers, let's see where. And it's not like I'm living in New York anymore. It's not like I'm going to these theaters every other month or something. I'm still a little bit like, so I'm walking, I'm looking at, and then I realize, oh crap, I've been walking uptown. I've got to go that way. So now the time is ticking again, and I'm starting to run out of time, but it's still quite a lovely day. It was a beautiful day last Saturday. So I'm okay, reverse steps, start walking a little faster towards the theater. I get to the theater. I even have time to use the bathroom before it starts. I get in. Everything's fine. I see the show. It's okay. It's actually really, really fun. If it were about an hour longer so, but it runs over an hour and a half, and I'm just sitting there going like, all right. Anywho, I come out of the show, and I'm feeling great. I made it to New York, had other things to do with my wife and the things she's dealing with and so forth. I get to see my shows. I come out, and now I want to go and get an Uber to go to my wife's family's house out in Queens. But I'm like, I'm hungry. I just, I had something a little bit for lunch, but I didn't really have time for lunch. So, and I certainly hadn't had time for dinner. And we're talking now, it's about 7:30. Let me grab a quick bite, and then I'll head over to the wife and her fam. So I'm walking a little bit, and it's getting colder. It's getting sort of colder and windier in a way that the day had not been. The last day or two had been lovely weather. But I'm feeling it. But I pass this, I guess you would say it's like a deli/burger place, and it's basically empty, which I love. And I know that's not a good sign for an eating establishment. You kind of want to be in a place that people, oh, go to this one. This is a good place. But, I've usually found that you can get perfectly good food in an empty place also. So I go in there, and these nice guys, and I'm like, oh, and for about $6 or $7, I get a cheeseburger that's really nice. Okay. And I'm sitting there, and I'm eating it. It takes some very little time to make it. I'm having a fine old time. And I'm like, and it'll take me 15 minutes to eat. And then, boom, I'll grab my Uber and see the missus. That'll be that. So I finish up. My hands are a little ooky. I go to the bathroom there. And, I come out and I figure what I'll do is I'll phone the Uber. I'll wait in the restaurant for whatever it is, 5-10 minutes, jump in the Uber, I'm good to go. I come out of the bathroom. And now suddenly, it was basically empty while I was eating there. Suddenly this group of about 8 South Asian men come in there. South Indian guys. Because I'm not sure if the owners of the establishment were Indian. They might have been Pakistani or a different ethnic group of that ilk, if you will. But these guys come in, and they are head up about something. One guy is getting really dressed down, and he's trying to defend himself verbally, and they're kind of on him. And I'm like, oh, great. Oh, wonderful. I've come out of the bathroom after this tasty meal, after this lovely day, and now I'm going to see somebody get the shit kicked out of them. And I'm getting out of here, like, right this second now. So I, very quickly scoot out of this restaurant. And now I'm on the corner. Okay, Uber time. Let me get out of here. So I'm dialing Uber, and I'm trying to save a little money because it ain't cheap to go from, East Side, downtown Manhattan to middle of Queens, right? So I'm going to save a little money. I say, okay, I'll do a ride share. Let me do a share and save about close to $10 on the Uber ride. What the hell? Not realizing that it has now gotten significantly colder and windier outside that Saturday evening. So I dial the Uber, and the Uber's like, yeah, okay, we got a ride for you. It's going to be about 15 minutes, which you don't figure. It's the middle of freaking Manhattan. Well, not the middle of sort of lower East E, Manhattan. Shouldn't an Uber take 3 minutes? Even a share? Why is it 15 minutes for an Uber? And I start thinking maybe I should have taken a cab. Because now I'm standing outside. I do have winter clothes on. But I didn't dress as warmly as I could have because it was such a beautiful day, right? So I don't have my faked long johns on, which I always do. I have my pajamas under my pants to give me that little extra protection. And I don't have a sweater on. I've just got my shirt. And I've got a hat. I've got a scarf. I'm not unprotected, but it is getting nasty out. And I can't go back into the restaurant because the gang of, Indian guys are still there. And it's weird because the whole restaurant has, has glass fronts. It's all glass windows. And you can look in, and they're not going to beat the crap out of this guy. They're just having a basic sort of argument that goes back and forth between an argument and being like a friendly argument where they're kind of smiling and hugging each other. So I don't know even what the hell is going on at this point. I think it was like a soccer game gone wrong, and now they're having it out in some deli place. And so I could have stayed in the place, but I'm not going back in because that would be weird. I can't just sort of go back and stand by the door, even though I'm starting to get really cold. And I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for the Uber. And it takes about 20 god darn minutes for the Uber to finally show. The people have left the restaurant by the time the Uber shows up, right? And I'm standing on the corner, just holding this phone. Finally, and because it's a share, I don't have the Uber to myself, which is, fine. I'm just happy to be in this warm car, right? I come in to the back seat of the Uber, and this girl starts, not yelling at me, but yelling towards, I just got robbed. I'm like, what? I was like, I was robbed today. I'm like, oh, sorry. And she starts telling me the story. Of course she's anxious, and of course she's upset. And not upset at me, but, she's on the phone, or texting her boyfriend and calling other people and saying she had gone to work. And she didn't just get robbed. It was much earlier in the day. She worked, according to her story, at a hat store down in towards I guess near the place where I was coming out of the restaurant. She worked at a hat place and had come in that day, had put her stuff down where other employees did to go work an event, some kind of hat event. I don't know they have these, but I guess they do. And when she came back, her stuff was there. They didn't just run off with her purse or her pocketbook, but they took the money out of her pocketbook, and she was missing about $120. And she was just really upset. They left her a couple of bucks, which was nice of them, but she was just really, really upset about this, as she would be. And of course, I'm trying to be like, well, did you immediately go to the cops? She's like, no, I didn't, but I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to file a report. I'm like, why don't you file a report? Because me, instead of being empathetic, I'm not the most empathetic soul. I'm more the logical, sort of pragmatic. The minute you discovered it was stolen, you run to the police station. What's the matter with you? I didn't quite put it that way, but she's upset, and she just got this job a week ago. She had just left this other place she was working for in the area. She was happy to get out of there, and this is why my wife and I are both wondering if it was a little bit stunna, because she said that the place that she had been working in and quit and left to work at the hat place, that morning there was a shooting there and someone got killed. And so this kind of made her feel better, because there but for the grace of God, and yes, she was out $120, but could have been worse. Right? She could have been working at the other place where they had a shooting, and that makes $120 seem like nothing. And now she's thinking, well, I don't want to work at this hack place anymore, but I have a cousin, and she works at this big medical center, and she's looking to get me a job. It's like, great, have her get me a job. And so, she's just rambling and talking and upset and texting, and then finally, I wish her the best. She keeps quiet. I keep quiet. I get on my phone. And the rest of the ride is pretty quiet and uneventful. But I'm pretty sure that by the end of that afternoon and early evening, I'm going to get sick. I just know it. I just sense it. I just standing out there in the cold. And I didn't even think to put my hood up, which would have protected my head a bit more, and the back of my neck and my ears in a way that my hat didn't. Didn't even occur to me. But standing there, the tension, the anxiety of of trying to make those two shows, running downtown, getting on the subway, having all this stuff. And also, my wife and I have been dealing with family things over the past couple of weeks. It's just all of that, and I'm not necessarily getting full night's sleep, but it's just all of this building and building and building, so that when I was teaching on Monday, I could feel in my throat. I was like, uh-oh. I was fine. But you get that little moment in your head where your head goes, uh-oh. I don't have my full voice. There's something a little raspy. There's something in the back there. When I swallow, it's not quite my usual swallow feeling, right? Or even my usual sparrow feeling. And I just kind of felt it, and I knew it, and I sensed it. I was hoping against hope. And within 2 days, I had my bi-seasonal, or is it semi-seasonal head cold. And this one's just hit me a little heavier and longer. It's been the sneezing, it's been the swallowing, it's been the, you can see it in the eyes. I'll give you those. Look at that. Look at that. And this is day 3. So yeah, it's been a fun time. Otherwise, actually, pardon me, the only, I won't say good part, is that I get to do the show this week, because I was thinking of having to cancel it and go be in New York and help my wife with some stuff there, which I should have done, but I'm just not compos mentis enough, not feeling it enough to be down there. So I get to at least be home. I'm going to nap again at some point today and just try and get this all out of me. But I get to do the show. I get to do episode 979 of the Dave's Gone By Facebookio, Podcastio, Programmio of the stream. We've been doing this show since October of 2002. Not 2022. 2002. Now, 22 years now, we have been doing Dave's Gone By. First on terrestrial radio, then on internet radio, then college radio, and now live streaming here on Facebook. And for your pleasure. We've got almost every episode we've ever done archived at davesgoneby.com and also on archive.org. We have a channel there, as well as the audio archives at castbox.fm. So yeah, years and years and years of Daveness. When I'm at my best, when I'm at my worst, and my usual in between. So check it all out. There's tons and tons, literally, quite literally, thousands of hours of material that I think you will enjoy. But today, I hope you will enjoy this episode of the show. Here's what we've got for you. First of all, we're very excited. I do want to pop up just to see. I asked our guest if... No, haven't heard back from him. He's probably sleeping. We do have a guest who's out on the West Coast, who's coming by in about an hour from now, who is a writer about a very specific and cool genre of TV, right? And it's one that's kind of denigrated and we don't really think about. You know, I've taught film and media and television at a local university, and we don't really talk much about this genre, even though I spent hours of my life, and certainly hours of my childhood, watching and enjoying and just letting time pass. And much of the way people scroll now, and an hour or two goes by when you're just looking at Facebook clips or at Instagram or TikTok clips. Basically, that's what childhood was, watching game shows. All the TV, the good ones, Jeopardy, right? The fun ones, Password. The dumb ones, Match Game, High Rollers, Let's Make a Deal. I mean, just, you would watch them because they were bright and colorful, and sometimes you would match wits with the contestants, or you just kind of rolled back and you kind of rooted for somebody who was on the panel or one of the contestants or something, or you enjoyed the celebrities who were on the show, or you just liked the host, right? You like the way the game was set up. You like the feeling. You like the, like everything. Everything has an arc, and there's a lovely arc to game shows. It's like, this happens, these are the rules, you follow the rules, and then you have these many contestants, then one gets knocked out, and then it comes down to sudden final this or that, and then boom, you have a winner, right? And that's a very satisfying trope. It's a very satisfying way to conduct any kind of a story. So there's something, even if you're watching 2 hours of stupid, pointless, ridiculous game shows, when you should be out there playing softball with your friends, or studying, or reading, or writing, or doing something really good, there's something nice about just kind of like, okay, boop, 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 let's watch. Something as dumb as Wheel of Fortune, or something as kind of ridiculous but fun, like Name That Tune. Nobody could play Name That Tune now. Literally, that ship has sailed because we have no idea what an orchestra playing 3 notes of like a Kendrick Lamar tune would be. But they were fun. So there's someone even beyond me who admits to and probably revels and is proud of his enjoyment of game shows. And the guy's name is Adam Nedeff. And he liked game shows so much that he ended up working for a couple, right, and being backstage and helping coordinate and deal with them. And he's also written books about the histories, not so much of shows themselves, but of game show hosts. People like Bill Cullen and Monty Hall and Alan Ludden, right? And who? Oh, and he did write a book. And I can't wait to ask him about this. He wrote a book about the Gong Show and Chuck Barris. And I know there have been other books about the Gong Show, but whatever he's dug up about this incredible masterpiece of terrible, wonderful television, I can't wait to hear. So Adam Nedeff is going to be with us in the Daverhood in just a little while. I feel lucky because I'm going to be doing the interview with Adam Nedeff. It was going to be Rabbi Saul Solomon, but Rabbi Saul, amazingly enough, he's also under the weather. He's a bit of a hypochondriac, so he thinks he's got hantavirus. I tell him not to read the newspapers. I tell him it's really not a good, just keep reading the Bible, don't read anything else. But he picks up any kind of website and he immediately starts to worry. So, he's getting checked out after shul today to see if he has hantavirus. He doesn't. But he's going to let me do the honors with Adam Nedeff today on Dave's Gone By, interviewing him about all these books he's written about game shows and game show hosts. Should be a ton of fun. He's also written some books about something that I'm not so into and I don't really care about, but he seems to be into like world wrestling and WWE, WWF. We can ask him about that too. And whatever else happens to come up. So Adam Nedeff here in the Daverhood in just a bit. Okay. What else we got coming up on this episode? So I also have a little bit of a headache. So I'm like rubbing my temples and my and like over the ridge of the eye. Ugh. Yes, it's been a fun week. What a year it's been, hasn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Anyway, we'll have Greeley Times, even though, alas, my lovely and adorable wife isn't with me today on the show. We are going to do a bit of Greeley Times. This is based on an actual column that appears twice a week in the Greeley Tribune newspaper out in northern Colorado. And what it is has to do with something real. When people in Evans and Greeley and Johnstown feel the need to call the police over something weird that they've seen happen in the neighborhood, there's a dispatcher, of course, there's a call taker at the first line at the police station. He or she will take that info, put that in, goes into the blotter, and then, I guess that's public information, because the newspaper gets it. They take out any real identifying things, a particular address or the names of someone calling, but everything else they can keep in, and when they see something that's kind of funny or ridiculous, it goes into this column once a week called Cop Log in the Greeley Tribune. Well, have been loving Cop Log for years now, and we take the best ones from Cop Log, share them with you on a segment or in a segment called Greeley Times here on Dave's Gone By. And I do have some Greeley Times to share with you today on the program. Let's see what else do we have. Time to get some more snot out. Hold on. Oh. The interesting thing is I thought, and maybe I will, I thought I would be doing my old phlegm today. I thought for sure with my cold that I would get to do a segment I did a few months back after really my last cold called My Old Phlegm, where I start talking, and because of my I guess I probably have some level of long COVID. I had some breathing issues and was bringing up phlegm about an hour after I woke up every day, and then I would hawk up a bit of phlegm and share that with you on the program. Like, because I couldn't help myself. I'd be talking, and then rise up and hawk it into my handkerchief, and then show you, and then read it like tea leaves. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever, which is saying something, one of the most disgusting things I've ever done on the show, and yet somehow I'm proud of that. And yet everything's been coming really through the sinus and nose from me today. So I'm not sharing that with you. If I have phlegm, catarrh, rather than snot and mucus to share, I will, being the generous soul that I am, share that with you and try and get some prophecy out of it. But so far, actually my throat's holding up, knock wood. And so far it's just this. But if there's any of this, we will do my old phlegm. But I'm not promising that. It doesn't look good. Bunion Watch looks pretty good. Bunion Watch is where I show you my bunions. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess I was born with them, or certainly they grew onto me fairly early in life and made buying shoes when I was a child a nightmare. Wearing shoes when I was a child a nightmare. I used to be made fun of, probably still do, because I would go to the theater, and even at work, when I was working in places, I'd take my shoes off all day. And they'd be like, hey, he's the barefoot critic. I'm like, yeah, go fuck yourself. Didn't really put it like that. And what they didn't get was the psychological reason was that I wore shoes that were unbelievably heavy and uncomfortable for years in school, for years as a child, because no other shoes would fit. Because I have very wide feet with giant-ass bunions on them. And so I couldn't wear a normal, comfortable shoe. No sneakers were made to fit me. They didn't have Velcro back then, where you could get a pair of shoes that were pretty flexible in how wide or tight you could make them. And so when I had the opportunity to get my shoes off, I would. Even when I started to be able to find shoes fairly easily my size, and get Skechers and things like that. So, Bunion Watch is a callback to my years of looking at, marveling at, cursing at my bunions. And just checking with you guys and having perhaps you tell me, hey Dave, your bunions are looking good today. Your bunions are round, they're bulbous, they're large and sort of red when you cross your toe and white when you don't, or vice versa. Your bunions are impressive and probably should be on network television, or at the very least have their own show on, say, Netflix or Hulu. They don't yet. But I keep hoping that Bunion Watch will turn into something bigger than it is. So you will be seeing, I make you this promise, my bunions before the end of this 979th episode of the Dave's Gone By show, where it is 9:30 in the morning Eastern Time here in the Daverhood. We're calling this episode Most Deaf, because, of course, we'll be interviewing Adam Nedeff about his game show books. What else are we going to do on the program? Story time. Yes, taking the onus off me to create new and interesting material, I will sometimes read someone else's book and make fun of it. And what could be more appropriate, ladies and gentlemen, now that we have RFK working for the White House, than the dragon who had the measles. And yes, RFK did, in fact, give a thumbs up for measles vaccine. I mean, the guy's not completely crazy. So, still, how appropriate in this era when we're actually discussing what are and are not decent vaccinations, the dragon who had the measles. I'm going to read this book by Krueger. And let's see, when did this thing come out? In 1990, and we'll talk about that, and we'll read it for you too. So that will be story time on Dave's Gone By. Also on this episode of the show, let's do Dave's Big Dick. Dictionary. Here it is, my friends. Dave's Big Dictionary. So what this does, this forces me to think on the fly, and onto other parts of my pants as well. The idea is that I will flip through this book completely at random. This is how many pages is this thing? This literally has, if you don't count geographical names and foreign words, this is about 820-something pages. 830-something pages. 840-something pages. Almost 850 pages of words and their definitions in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, America's best-selling Dictionary. New edition as of, what year was this? 2016. So it's missing a few words. It's missing a couple, but it's got a bunch. I will flip through here. In fact, yeah, I'll do it in a moment. And pick a word completely at random. And then just a little bit later in the show, my job, should I choose to accept it, and I will, is to talk off the cuff, extemporaneously, about whatever that word brings to mind. It could be something absolutely direct, or it could spark some memory or thought in me of an anecdote that is only tangentially related, but it still allows me to get about 5 minutes or so of material to talk about. So as I mentioned on the show several times, this came about as one of the things when I was trying to morph this program from being completely scripted to allowing me to be more and more just off the top of my head and free-flowing in my delivery and what I'm talking about. So this is a way to really test those muscles. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to have Pooey help me. Here, of course, is Pooey. How you doing, Pooey? Oh, I'm sick. Pooey, don't tell me you're sick too. Everybody. My wife had a bit of a migraine this week, and she wasn't feeling so well. I've been sick. People I know have been sick. Now you're sick too. What's the matter? I'm constipated. How are you constipated, Pooey? How does that even happen? I don't know. I was eating too little fiber. Well, gee, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. All right, Pooey. Okay, Pooey. It's all right. I need to come out. All right. Well, Pooey, maybe this will help. Maybe one of the things that helps people go to the bathroom is being active. If you go for a run, if you get all your circuits working, I'll go for a run. Any luck? Not yet. And turn. Oh boy. Oh, this could take a while. All right, fair enough. So, Pooey, I do have another aerobic activity for you. You're going to help me do Dave's Big Dictionary. And what you're going to do is I'm going to thumb through the pages of this book, and you're just going to go whoop down whenever you feel you're ready, wherever it is on the page, and then that will be the word I'll have to talk about a little later in the show. Do you think you can do that? I might leave a smear on the page. That's okay. As long as I can still read under your smear, I think we're all right. You know, I should wash my hands right after the show, now that I think about it. Ha! All right, let's do this, Pooey. So we're going to set up Dave's Big Dictionary right now. Here's the book. I'm going to start scrolling through it. In fact, I'll put this down so you can actually see what I'm doing here. Here's Pooey. Here we go. La 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 la. Okay. Pooey. Let's see where Pooey has landed. The Pooey has landed. Oh God. Dry dock. You couldn't have hit dry clean. I couldn't have done that one. Dry dock. A dock that can be kept dry during ship construction or repair. Maybe we won't do Dave's Big Dictionary. Dry dock. I do have something to talk about. Okay. I got to check one or two things on the interweb, which of course I don't have time to do because I have no downtime. This goes straight through 2.5 to 3 hours. But dry dock, I just have to do one little bit of Googling. But I think because I don't know anything about shipbuilding terms. I read Moby Dick. Half the chapters were great. Half the chapters were like all this stuff about shipbuilding and whales. But let me check this one thing. La 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 la. Talk amongst yourselves. Ha ha. Okay. Yeah. Good. I can do Dave's Big Dictionary. So the word for Dave's Big Dictionary will be dry dock. Actually, let me look that up again. Let me see if it's one word or two. It is, I think it's 2. La la la. Yeah, it's 2 separate words, a noun, a deck that can be kept dry during ship construction or repair. What was the point of that, though? Or, you know what, I'll do that during Dave's Big Dictionary. So that is coming up also. We'll also have our friends of the Daverhood, and it wouldn't be a Dave's Gone By episode without our Colorado Limerick of the Damned. And that is because my wife and I lived in northern Colorado for about 13 years. We were both teaching at a university there, and so Colorado, I think, is a pretty wonderful place. And it's got a lot. You'd be surprised how many cities and towns and little hicks and burgs there are, and ghost towns and neighborhoods there are. Hundreds. Well, that kind of sparked me to start writing a poem about as many different places in Colorado as I could possibly come up with, to the point where it wasn't just off the top of my head. I started going into like Wikipedia and maps and looking for more and more places, to the point now where I have more than 300 of these wretched, risque, tasteless, naughty, 5-line poems, these limericks, each about a different place in Colorado. And today, we have a new one. We're going to Bridle Dale, Colorado. Bridle Dale. Bridle more like the horse thing, which will tell you something. Bridle Dale, Colorado. I'll tell you a little bit about the place, and we'll have our Colorado Limerick, all about it, later in the show. So even though I am suffering this morning, even though it's taking all my energy to just plow through this head cold, to talk to you, I am giving you the very best show that I possibly can here on Dave's Gone By. By the way, how you feeling, Pooey? Oh, I'm so logy. I feel like a log. I know. All right. But keep going. There you go. I'm crowning. All right. Maybe by the end of the show, Pooey will have his constipation relieved. Do you want? I don't know if we have any. Maybe some Malox. Oh, I could go for some Malox and bagels. That's a Pooey joke. Anyway. Why don't we get to StoryTime, my friends? StoryTime is based. We started doing this back when we were in Colorado, actually, and I was at a gas station auto repair shop, and they had in the waiting area not just the daily newspaper and not just a couple of car and driver magazines and stuff, but a couple of books for children, including a goat. There was a cow for Hansel. A cow for Hansel. And I actually read the book week after week after week on the show. And it started this new segment we call Storytime, where I just read someone else's book. Today's book is The Dragon Who Had the Measles. And certainly appropriate when we're talking about all these communicable diseases and whether or not vaccinations are the way to treat them, and generally that is the way you treat a communicable disease. But this is why we do Story Time on Dave's Gone By.
Tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story, remember what you said. You promised me, you said you would, you got to give in, so I'll be good. Tell me a story, then I'll go to bed.
So, story time on Dave's Gone By. Very excited to bring this to you. This is a children's book. Wait, where's my camera? There he is. Hello, Dave. Story time on Dave's Gone By. The Dragon, and I'm dragging my feet today, The Dragon Who Had the Measles. I can also tell I'm sick because I literally can't read anything without my glasses. This is written by Carol Krueger, featuring illustrations by Trevor Pye. Copyright 1990 by Shortland Publications Limited. Whoa! This is kind of interesting. this book, which I got in one of those pull-away local book depository, you leave a book, take a book, little mini house things, is published from New Zealand, which is kind of neat. That's pretty neat. What else do you want to know about this book? It's distributed from a United States publisher in Crystal Lake, Illinois, called Rigby, distributed in Canada by Gin Publishing, printed, of course, by Quang Fat Offset Printing Company Limited in Hong Kong. So, of course, even 30-something years ago, if you want something to do anything cheaply, you got to ship it overseas. By the way, Quang Fat is the name of the place in Hong Kong where they actually printed the book. Anyway, let's get to the dragon who had the measles. Princess Petra had a huge pet dragon. Oh, don't you just love alliteration? Isn't that sort of the laziest children's book trope that you can have? It's like, oh, let's just make all the first letters the same. Princess Petra had a huge pet dragon. His name was Puffy McDuffie. I think her prince probably had a Puffy McDuffie too, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know if it probably wasn't huge, which is why she needed the dragon. And he was sometimes called Puffy for short, or his rap friends called him Puff Draggy. That would make that Puff Draggy. I'll call him that. One day, Puff Draggy woke up with spots, little red ones, all over him, on his nose, along his back, over his tum. This is New Zealand, my friends, so tum is probably short for tummy. I can't guarantee that. I can't guarantee that a tum isn't a Puffy McDuffie, if you know what I'm saying, and I think you don't. And the spots went right to the end of his tail. So, I'm thinking gonorrhea. The castle doctor was sent for immediately. Oh boy. Measles, he said. He must be put to bed, kept warm, and his eyes kept out of the light. I don't really know that much about measles. I'm not sure where that's coming. I'm going to look that up. That is an interesting thing. Why would they put that in the book? Is it because your eyes are really sensitive, or that light sensitive? Measles is highly contagious and it causes light sensitivity known as photophobia. So you get swelling of the eyes like conjunctivitis. Huh. Oh, so it's just basically not to irritate the eye. I did not know this. Huh. Anyway, maybe and German measles. If you get German measles, you have sensitivity to gas chambers. I don't know if you knew this. All right. The maids put 10 mattresses down the corridor, and they stitched 30 quilts together. Aw. Princess Petra put Puffy to bed with 150 hot water bottles, and she gave him a pair of Swish sunglasses. I don't know where they're coming up with these things, but if you want to know what a Swish sunglass is, no, there's nothing homophobic about it. It seems to be that. And you can see the way the dragon is reacting to getting those particular sunglasses. I'm going to look those up to all those New Zealanders and their terminology. What are Swish sunglasses? They're not even a thing. What the hell? Oh, I guess Swish is a label? An independent fashion business trading in the heart of Edinburgh. I wonder if the author of this book has stock in Swish or something. Never heard of such a thing. Anyway. Oh, dear. Oh, okay, so this goes off the rails pretty quick. Look at that. Oh, my goodness. There you go. That's Donald Trump when somebody disagrees with him. All right. Aunt Fiddlesticks, the king's fairy aunt, flew in. Oh, yes. Yes. The dragon, or I guess the princess has a fairy aunt. Gender unspecified. I'll fix him, she said. She waved her hand over poor old Puffy. Excuse me. And he gave an almighty sneeze. and blew Aunt Fiddlesticks away. Okay, so because this looks like he's screaming, he's having a tantrum, but he's actually giving her obviously a blowjob. But the poor dragon still had the measles. You know, I just thought of this. How do you tell if a room of dragons has the measles? Well, you do spot checks. No. Okay, no, I know, no. Poor Puffy, said the queen, you need some fruit juice. So she ordered 14 gallons of fruit juice, and Puffy drank it all up through a big blue straw. So here's old Puffy. I would say that it's actually an intelligent thing. You know, juice is a healthy, it's a lot of sugar, but you're also getting vitamins and vitamin C. So you would figure, and there's Puffy with his swish glasses on, sucking through a straw. She probably shouldn't have used his felching straw that he uses on weekends, but okay, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Princess Petra kept on refilling the hot water bottles, and she read Puffy lots of stories. So that also would make a dragon feel better when he's not sleepy. Just, here's Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller. Here's the story of O. Here's the story of P, story of Q, story of R. Lots of really great literature for Puffy to read. Oh, look at this. At the end of the week, Puffy woke up and the sun was shining. The spots have gone, cried the queen. Look at that. Puffy looking pretty good there. Oh yeah, why there's so many people in his room in a sickbed, I don't know. Disappeared, cheered the maids. No more measles, shouted the king. When did the king come in? In fact, yeah, king just sort of showed up out of nowhere. Oh no, the king is there. Yeah, king was there early on. They didn't really make much mention of him. But he's back. King comes in. Everybody was happy. Puffy McDuffy, the doctor, the queen, the king, and Fiddlesticks, and the maids. Everybody doing well. Oh! Was not expecting the twist. Was not expecting the Rosemary's Baby aspect of this seemingly, harmless, guileless children's book. What do you think happens, ladies and gentlemen? Everyone was happy. You know who isn't happy? Well, Princess Petra is not happy because now she had the measles. Wah, 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 wah. Very cute. Very, very funny. I gotta admit, that caught me. Was not expecting that last page. That's kind of cute and horrible at the same time. Because notice, they do all this stuff to save her dragon. And meanwhile, she's kind of there. Nobody's tending to her. She's got a blanket. She doesn't really need a quilt. And she does have juice. But it's not like her straw goes all the way to the juice. She's got to sit her ass up and get that. Ain't nobody helping her or reading stories to her. She's on her own. Which is, there is a moral lesson to this book. There is a thing of like, it's kind of like when parents have their first child, right? And I don't have kids, but I understand this, that you have a kid and the world revolves around that child. Every time the child has a sneeze, you run to the doctor. A bug bite, you're getting 10 different kinds of medicines and looking up everything. Every single moment of that child's life is micromanaged. The second those parents have a second kid, it's like, go play in traffic, you'll be fine. It's kind of, we've been through this. We've done this with your older brother. You live, you die. We love you, but we already got one. And so it's literally that is the underlying moral theme of the dragon who had the measles. It's like, we just went through all of this with the dragon. Sorry you've got it now too, but you know what, kid? You're on your own. We'll check in on you. We'll give you, a little hat to wear. We'll give you a little, I guess that's her thermometer. Your little other toy. Notice the dragon's not anywhere either. Here she is. She spent the whole, week or whatever helping this poor dragon. Now the dragon's nowhere to be seen, Well, because he'll probably be immune at this point. He's not going to get measles again. So there you go. By the way, this is a stage, I don't know what the hell. It's a book about Literacy 2000. So these are other books in the Literacy Stage 5 series, including Knit, 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 which I guess is different from Lice, Slice, Slice, Slice. Souvenirs, The Tickle Bugs, Tommy's Treasure, Look Out for Your Tail, which is a book, I guess, about the Kardashians, The Dragon Who Had the Measles, Cat Concert, The Smallest Tree, The Beekeeper and Diary of the Honeybee, The Two Foolish Cats, and Friends Are Forever. And just in case you forgot that this was a series from New Zealand, there's also The Oogly Gum Chasing Game. I repeat, The Oogly Gum Chasing Game, because I guess back they have the gum tree thing, I don't even know. Mr. Pepperpot's Pet, more with that alliteration shit. Something Soft for Danny Bear. Yeah, book about ED for youngsters. The T-Shirt Triplets, something about my T-shirt line, I guess, and The Little Girl and Her Beetle, driving her Volkswagen around town. The Skeleton on the Bus, Lucy Meets a Dragon, Zoe at the Fancy Dress Ball, Matthew's Tantrum, and of course Camping with Claudine, which sort of sounds like one of those French Nouvelle Vague films. But ladies and gentlemen, we have here The Dragon Who Had the Measles, our story time here on Dave's Gone By, live on this Saturday morning, March 8th, 2025. I'm Dave Lefkowitz. This is our 979th edition of the program. We're calling this one MOS DEFF because writer Adam Nedeff will be here in just a little bit to talk about his books. His book's all about game shows. He grew up watching them, he's worked for a few of them, and he's written books about people like Bill Cullen and Chuck Barris and Alan Ludden. So should be a lot of fun talking about little-known things about them, best and worst moments in the history of American game shows. Should be a whole bunch of fun. Adam Nedeff coming up not too far from now in the Daverhood today on Dave's Gone By. I want to remind you that if you want to read my writing, because you know davesgoneby.com is the website for my show and where all the archives for this program are. But I also have written hundreds of theater reviews over the years. I've written dozens and dozens of articles and interviews about people in the arts and entertainment. I've written dozens of songs. I've written quite a few one-act plays and a couple of full-length plays. What else? Just a lot of comical essays. Tons and tons of mostly comic, but not all, writing. And I'm trying to gather that stuff before I die, before this cold takes me out. If you want to read my stuff, go to davelefkowitz.org, davelefkowitz.org. And it's all there, it's free. So, if you have a theater company, you're doing a one-act evening, and maybe you want to do one of my plays are there. There's more than a dozen of them, of these short plays ranging from 5 minutes to about half an hour or so. Check them out. You might enjoy them, and you might feel like, hey, an audience would dig this. These are fun. Please, I put them out there just so we don't want to just write something and it goes into a drawer. It's also one of the reasons I do this show, is that I can put together something comical and it's there. Maybe 10 people watch it, maybe 100 people watch it, not 20,000 or 2 million. But it's beyond me. It gets out there, and who knows what life it will have in a year or 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 years. Who knows? Anywho, it's all there, davelefkowitz.org. And of course, davesgoneby.com is the website, the official website for this program. So, as I mentioned, we have other things to do on this show. We've got Bunion Watch coming up. We have Adam Nedeff. We have our Colorado Limerick of the Damned. What else are we going to do on this big... Greeley Times. Haven't even done that yet. But let's see, is there anything to talk about? Anything to go off on before I get to some of the other segments of the show. Usually I do this kind of thing with my darling and adorable wife, who couldn't be here today because she's in New York and Queens dealing with some things. But let's just want to throw some stuff out there. Notice how the light has changed because it's got sunny out. We actually have some nice weather on a Saturday. How lovely. Okay. Gene Hackman. Right? Soon as we heard the story about a week and a half ago, it seemed pretty obvious to me. It seemed like, oh, okay, so he died, she died, and she was 30 years younger than he was. And then the dog died, all presumably on the same night. That's carbon monoxide. I think I mentioned this last week, or maybe not. But that's got to be. How does this happen? It's not like they were both the same age or had a suicide pact. It's like they all died in the house. Something got to them immediately, and probably carbon monoxide wandered into the house, as it did. Tragically, I mean, the most famous case probably of this was Weird Al Yankovic. Weird Al was on tour something like 20 years ago, and he got the phone call that his parents had both died on the same night. They were sitting on the couch watching TV, and they never woke up. What happened? Carbon monoxide got into the house and killed them, which is actually a pretty great way to die. This is why people, when they are thinking of killing themselves, they close the door of the garage, they turn on the car, boom. When I was teaching a course about literature, the terrible story of the fellow who wrote A Confederacy of Dunces, and my brain is not letting me remember his name, John Kennedy Toole. This is what he did. His book, his masterpiece of comic literature, was a big flop. It wasn't even published. He couldn't get it published, and that ruined his psyche. So, and he couldn't deal with his mom. He didn't want to deal with anything else, and he was probably closeted gay. Hard to tell. So everything was going wrong with him, and he just took this road trip, took all his money out of the bank, went on a road trip, stopped on the side of the road, took the exhaust pipe, hooked it back into the car, closed the windows, and in a very quiet and painless way, just died, right? Killed himself at the age of something like 33. So it is a good way to die, but it's still kind of horrible and sad to hear about. So you figure Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa and their poor pooch, okay. But then it was kind of, no, because she was sitting at the counter and there were his pills or her pills all over the counter and foul play. And so I was like, what else could it possibly be? And a day or two ago, now they're saying hantavirus. Okay, so we've got this very, very rich guy. I mean, he obviously must have made quite a lot of money doing movies. I'm not sure what her gig was. They were living in a mansion, probably not well looked after the past few years, in the sense that they probably had a rodent problem, allegedly, and that this rodent, kind of like the bubonic plague, was carrying this thing called hantavirus and killed them. This rodent-borne virus kills a multi-millionaire famous actor and his younger wife and their dog, right? And you have to figure, the dog probably didn't die of hantavirus. This is horrible, probably starved to death. Probably was in a crate and didn't know where to get food and just languished because nobody was there to feed him. They may not have died the same time. She apparently died before he did, and he was 95. So she was dead, and he was apparently had heavy Alzheimer's at this point. So he's kind of walking around, sees her on the kitchen floor maybe. Hi, hon, who are you? Wandering around, goes to the fridge, grabs something, and then he drops dead a few days later or whatever. It's a really, really messed up situation. How do you not know your wife is dead for a week and a half? It makes you wonder what their sex life was. Makes you wonder if, like, 3 days before he died, he was like, hi, hon, oh, it's my birthday. Yep, you know what that means. He gets on top of her and is like, wow, she's less interested even than usual. Okay, that was fun. And then he goes off and watches TV and watches a rerun of The French Connection or something. I can't even imagine. But wow. Not to mention, if you figure this really was hantavirus, you've got this mansion that they had, right? This great Hollywood star home that is worth X, Y, and Z, right? And they've got to knock at least $2 million off the price, because who wants to live in a house that has airborne rat virus in it that has killed people? You figure, okay, someone gets old, Gloria Swanson dies in her mansion, fine, whatever. Or Harold Lloyd dies and lived here a long time, dies. And Harold Lloyd lived here, and look at the swimming pool, and look at the statue, and yeah, you get to keep this. But this is more like, holy crap. They were breathing the air in this mansion and dropped dead. I don't know if they can sell that place. They probably have to put in like incredible air filters and knock down wall or go under and into the surfaces of things, because rats are behind and under and eating through the this and chewing through the that. I don't know what the hell they're going to get for that mansion. Who would live there? Who would feel comfortable saying, okay, there's some airborne virus that killed the folks who were living there, but I'm going to take my shot. It's Gene Hackman's house, which I think is kind of amazing, which is very different from a story that they just had on the Post yesterday or today, where an apartment, a tiny little 400 square foot apartment that Joey Ramone was living in when he was downtown and playing at CBGB's and those places with the Ramones, that's going up for sale for about $575,000, which you almost feel that's how insane the world is cheap. Right, I mean, we're talking a studio. We're talking essentially a room with a kitchen or kitchenette in the room, little bathroom on the side. It had been nicely renovated. I mean, they put thousands and thousands of renovations into it a few years back. So it obviously did not look like it did when Joey Ramone was living there in the late 1970s. It wasn't like an upgraded version of the CBGB's toilet that people would be living in downtown because they weren't paying a lot of rent then, and you could afford to live in Manhattan if you lived like a rodent. Now it's actually quite a nice looking place to live. It's just you have no space. It's a box, right? So you have to be willing to have that New York mindset of, I'm here to sleep and to change clothes. But the second the dawn comes up, I'm out the door, because otherwise I'm going to go stir crazy. And then I come home at 2 o'clock in the morning after a club or after a show or after a gallery opening and just crash for 4 hours, go to my job, and do this 7 days a week until I die, right? That's what New York does to you in a good and a bad way. But it's so different from, like, here's Gene Hackman's mansion that I can't even imagine them selling for $500,000 considering what went on now, versus Joey Ramone's little New York apartment that is worth and will probably get $575K to buy. And who knows what now the HOA or the upkeep is on this co-op-y place. But what you do get, and this is kind of cool, is it does come with stuff that Joey left over, like song lyrics on pages, contracts, Ramones era memorabilia and things. So you figure a really savvy person who buys the apartment and holds on to some of this material can probably, if they get the right things at Sotheby's and Christie's and so forth, could auction one piece of paper for $30,000, and that'll pay 6 months rent or whatever. So I don't know. There's something of a good deal in it, even as you would look at this apartment and go, okay, you're paying for something that is the size of the room I am in right now in our house in Maryland. And that's it, right? In New York. And it's more than we're paying for the mortgage of this house that has 7 rooms of this size. One or two a little bigger. No, they're all either this size or bigger, right? I mean, it's New York. It's New York, kids. Anywho, So I wanted to expound upon Gene Hackman a little bit, as well as, and by the way, terrific actor, from French Connection, of course, Young Frankenstein, which was the unexpected beauty of the casting of that film. Gene Hackman and Peter Boyle, who would never have been even thought of for doing comedy. And this is the true thing of you play comedy straight. Unless you're really a straight-up clown like a Jerry Lewis or a Harpo Marx. But you play the comedy super straight, and if the comedy itself is funny, that's what works. So, Peter Boyle was doing movies like Joe, I forget, like these late 70s dark, Taxi Driver. And suddenly, Mel Brooks is like, oh no, I see you in Young Frankenstein. And then Gene Hackman? Of course it worked. It was beautiful casting there. Hackman was great. There's nothing really else to say about that. I want to say also a farewell to George Lowe, who passed away a day or two ago, or maybe a couple of days ago, at the age of only 67. He had heart issues, he had other health issues. You wouldn't know him on the street to look at him, but you would know that voice if you ever watched Comedy Central or Cartoon Network. He was the unforgettable voice of Space Ghost. And I can't say that Space Ghost was my favorite alterna Adult Swim kind of cartoon. I wanted to get it. Sometimes it was really funny. Otherwise, it was already too out there for me. I'm too old. I was of a generation that was watching still the Flintstones on prime time, right? And Saturday morning cartoons like Warner Brothers, of course, and Bugs Bunny, but Hong Kong Phooey and Hanna-Barbera. So when Space Ghost came along, it was already almost too postmodern for my sensibility to be that funny. I'm like, it's trying to be funny. It's trying to be so absurd. And I appreciate that it is trying to do that. It's just not making me laugh a lot of the time. And this is an issue I have with a lot of postmodern comedy, post-postmodern comedy and animation. And so that's why I respect Space Ghost and have enjoyed some of their episodes. But for the most part, I sit there and I watch and I'm like, and I do like Brack. I love Brack's voice. And if you've never seen Space Ghost, you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. But Brack is like the idiot character, which is always sort of, he's the meatwad of Space Ghost. But something about George Lowe's voice as Space Ghost, who is this superhero, this Batman, Superman kind of figure, who hosts a talk show, but it does it in a very egotistical and not self-knowing kind of a way. And then he's got Zorak, who is his aide-de-camp, his Paul Schaefer, if you will. But Zorak is kind of an evil praying mantis. It's a cartoon. Praying mantis personality. And then they'll do interviews with celebrities, but the interviews are so chopped up and so pointless and ridiculous. And so the celebrity almost never gets to answer a real question. So again, the idea of Space Ghost is funnier for me than a lot of the actual playing out of a Space Ghost episode. And yet, it was a great idea. It's a seminal cartoon, and it is geared by some great voices. So the voices are terrific, all of them. The Zorak voice, the Brack voice, of course, and that wonderful Gary Owens-style George Lowe voice for Space Ghost. Now, he ended up bringing to the Brack show, and it would show up also, he did voices, I think, on Aqua Teen Hunger Force, so he was a fairly ubiquitous figure in a lot of those Adult Swim shows. So I gotta say a big farewell to George Lowe. And hey, farewell to $400 million going to Columbia University. I don't know how I feel about this. I am not, the way so many other people are, a Trump hater. Not. You know, all of my friends, all colleagues, everybody's left wing. Everybody despises Trump, thinks he's the worst human being in the history of the universe. Can't trust him. He's a con artist, which is of course true. But at the same time, I didn't think his presidency was that terrible, right? And I'm wondering if some of his ideas, if they are properly instituted, might actually work. When I give him an actual shot, it's like what Bill Maher said a week or so ago, saying, I don't just hate Trump on a knee-jerk level. I voted against him. I would never vote for him. He's obviously a criminal. He's obviously a little crazy. He's obviously this. But just because he has an idea, and he has 12 ideas a day, doesn't mean it's automatically a bad idea because he said it. You know, give the good ideas a shot, and then try and push the bad ones down. Right, so I'm there with that, and one of his ideas is that, at least until he turns on us, he's been very pro-Israel. He was pro-Israel during his 4 years in office, and he's been quite pro-Israel now in helping Israel during its year-and-a-half war that didn't start under his administration. That started under Biden, right? And saying, hey, what's been going on college campuses all over America is disgusting. It goes beyond the level of free speech into a level of borderline anti-Semitism. So what he did a day or two ago is, you know what? Columbia University, which has been one of the absolute flashpoints, tinder points of campus unrest in these tent cities, and not to mention vandalism and vagrantism by these protesters, we're giving these people a lot of money from the federal government. This very rich university, maybe we'll pull a few million, 400 million, from their coffers until they fix that and they figure out how to, keep people feeling safe on the campus so that Jews aren't trying to go to class and then confronted by the idea that they are committing genocide, just by walking around, just by being there. Now, as a writer, as a podcaster, as a songwriter, and as someone who relentlessly tries to push the envelope, as someone who absolutely believes in telling the sick, dirty, nasty, sexist, racist, homophobic joke, seeing where it lands, and then pulling back, oh, maybe I went too far, as opposed to self-censoring and not telling. The bounds of free speech are rather sacred to me. So as an older person, right, I question like the whole thing of how I would stand now should, let's say, the Nazis march in Skokie again. As I did 40-something years ago, when I was outraged, I wanted to get on a bus to Skokie with a baseball bat and start bashing Nazi heads because these white supremacists wanted to march through this town in Illinois that was filled with Holocaust survivors. It was designed, a nonviolent march, mind you, but just to have Nazi ideology, swastikas, marching through this little town in America full of Jews, full of old Jews, many of them with numbers on their arms, to put a certain level of fear and disgust into them. And at that age, I was like, how could the ACLU defend this march? And then as an older person and as someone who has been surrounded by left-wing people most of my life because I've been in theater and I've been in academia, I was sort of like, well, free speech is really important, and if they're nonviolent, and if they have a permit for the march, no matter what they're saying is blah, 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 and of course the other side has every right to be across the street, screaming at them, hurling invective at them, giving them the finger, holding up their own signs, and so forth. So there's a part of me that is really, really torn when you have a university that students can march if they get a permit, or stand there and scream their stupid slogans and hold their idiotic signs. And if they're not hurting physically anybody, and they're not breaking into buildings or spray painting or setting up tents and living on lawns where the university has told them not to go, or okay, you've had your 3 hours, get up and go, you kind of got to let them. right? If they're saying things that are directly anti-Semitic, we don't like kikes, then you can pick them up by the scruff of the neck, and if not arrest them, certainly get them off the campus and expel them. Now, the university has the right to do that sort of thing. They don't need legal laws to expel somebody for doing that kind of hate speech. But just to say, the moronic free Gaza, free Palestine, river to the sea, all that shit, protected speech, not directly anti-Semitic, even though it's hateful, isn't necessarily hate speech. And if they have, for a certain period of time, the right to be there, and they're not breaking shit, and they're not causing $30,000 worth of damage, which I think they did either to Harvard or to Columbia, as the Yiddish term, lazem game. So Trump pulling money from the university, as a Jew, I feel grateful. As a Jew, I feel like the president has my back. The president who has for many, many years understood, even if he doesn't believe it, even if he's personally anti-Semite, the president is kind of standing by my people and my other country, if you will, and saying, here's $3 billion for Israel to get the job done and get Hamas the fuck out of Gaza, right? If Gaza is 70% destroyed anyway, take all the people out, level it, turn it into the Riviera, and then invite the Arabs back if they'll live peacefully, right? And make it, Israel/International City America, and everybody will want to go there. Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Oh, but Donald Trump is crazy and terrible for even suggesting that idea. For it becomes genocide when you're pushing people off for a period of time to help fumigate and rebuild the place that they have elected people to help destroy, right? But no, Trump is wrong about everything. He's always wrong. Whether he's wrong about pulling $400 million from Columbia, I don't know. I like the idea of it. The reality of it does perhaps cross the line of what is free and accepted speech. It is something that I think about constantly. It is something that I don't have a direct, inviolable, black and white answer for. But, I gotta say, if President Trump has a heart, it's in the right place on this issue, and I thank him for that. I also thank our guest in the Daverhood. He's come, and his name is Adam Nedeff, and we're going to get him on a little bit early. He's very kind for logging in early. I kind of asked him to do that because I didn't know if I could get through the show with my cold. But I can. So, ladies and gentlemen, entering the Daverhood on this Saturday morning, March 8th, I should have my glasses on, is a fellow who's written several books, and his area of expertise is game shows. So the answer to the question, who is our guest in the Daverhood, is who is Adam Nedeff. And Adam, welcome to Dave's Gone By. How you doing?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the very game showy introduction. I always love it when a host does that.
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have any prizes for you to take home. We don't have the home edition of the Dave's Gone By board game, but we do have you there. Is that is that a traffic light to your?
Yeah. Yes. This has nothing to do with game shows, but you see the neighborhood trolley behind me. That was the one on the top shelf was built by my grandfather because I was a Mr. Rogers fan when I was a very, very little kid. So a friend of mine gave me a traffic light to go with the trolley a few Christmases ago. So my whole world is just this is definitely the apartment of somebody who grew up watching too much TV, because you'll find just relics of game shows and Mr. Rogers and David Letterman and just all kinds of stuff. This is a guy who has one very narrow hobby who lives in this apartment, and you could tell that just from walking in here.
No, it's one. I mean, I grew up in that generation too, right? I'm a little older than you, but I'm also of the people complain now that all kids do and teenagers do is they look at their phones, they scroll. They can spend 2 hours just looking at 90-second video, and we make fun of that. And as a teacher, I despair over it. And yet, I was somebody who would plunk my ass down, 4 o'clock after school, and game show, cartoon, game show.
Yeah. I mean, that was always my summer too, because I grew up in that sweet spot where the game shows were still on the networks in the morning, but then the cable channels had game show reruns in the afternoon. So my entire summer day was just a wall of game shows. And, it was, my mother always had to lay down the law and tell me to go outside and get fresh air. I had to be told to do that. Otherwise, it would have been game shows until sunset.
Fresh air is overrated. Where'd you grow up? In New York, New Jersey? Where were you?
I grew up in a little town called Vienna, West Virginia. It's right on the West Virginia-Ohio border, right on the Ohio River.
So basically,
And
you're not even breathing fresh air. You're breathing coal dust.
pretty much,
There's no fresh air to breathe.
yeah.
You're breathing dead minor cells off their bodies. Is essentially all you're breathing in West Virginia. So, what was your favorite game show as a child? Did you have a favorite?
My favorite growing up was Wheel of Fortune. My grandfather, in fact, saw that I loved Wheel of Fortune so much, he made a little toy Wheel of Fortune for me out of some cardboard and a nut and a bolt, and drew some wedges on it for me and wrote the numbers on it for me. But I have and still have a little toy Wheel of Fortune. I've got it on a bookshelf in the other room. And so Wheel of Fortune was my early favorite thing. And I've talked about this with other game show fans. We're all kind of in agreement with this. People who are obsessed with game shows like me had a leg up with reading when we started school. And I really do believe that comes directly from watching game shows. I grew up watching Wheel of Fortune, and you learn your letters very quickly from that show, and you learn what sounds they make, and you learn how they go into words. And then I also was a fan of Super Password growing up, so I learned word association. I learned what words meant. So different things like that. I really do believe I learned a lot of stuff real early from watching game shows, and I don't think that's a coincidence, having spoken to a lot of my friends about that. We all had a head start with reading and writing when we started school because of watching game shows.
And we think, we're told that, oh, no, it was Sesame Street. It was the electric company. It wasn't really. You're right, because I already knew how to read, and when I was watching Sesame Street, I already knew the letters. They weren't teaching me that. I learned a couple of Spanish words from Sesame and electric company. I enjoyed the electric company, but I knew vowel sounds. I knew how to make words and letters. I was just enjoying the shows. Probably I got more out of game shows in terms of knowledge and learning and putting things together. Maybe you're right about that. So what happened, though, there was sort of a game show American Renaissance. I guess now it goes back maybe 20 years, when you had things like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and it went back into prime time. Now we've definitely seen that falling off, and reality sort of contest shows have taken over for game shows. What do you think, we had that rise and then kind of senescence of the game show era recently?
Success breeds imitation. So what happened? Obviously, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was the catalyst, like you said, and so we had the other game shows, the other networks jumping on the bandwagon with game shows. So that's how we got The Weakest Link. NBC tried, 21 for a while. CBS had Winning Lines, and so things kept going until we got Deal or No Deal. Eventually, NBC struck gold with that. And so we had that boom period. And it's not faded away. It hasn't tapered off. I think what's sort of tapered off is really the development of new game show ideas. What's happened in the last decade or so is you see very often new game shows are actually revivals or reworkings of past game shows. ABC in the summer of 2016 announces we're doing an entire night of game shows on our schedule. They called it Sunday Night Fun and Games, and it was Pyramid and Match Game and To Tell the Truth and Family Feud. And very successful, very entertaining shows. But the thing is, especially in this day and age, this is not a world that rewards risk. There's a lot of trying to do what's already been done in the world of game shows and in the world of television in general, because it's a lot safer to say, let's do this thing that was on the air for 10 years and years ago, because we know that has an audience. We know that works. We know that it's going to find.
And there's also a nostalgia factor. There's also like the parents who are 50 remember watching those shows, and now they'll bring their children. Everybody can sit around watching TV. There's no sex and violence, although now there's probably dirty jokes in them hidden.
Yeah.
And
And
that's okay.
so,
But yeah,
this is the knock on game shows has always been it attracts an older audience. The elderly people watch game shows. And that is true. But at the same time, the plus side to that nobody really touches on is you hear people say all the time, I remember watching the show with my grandparents. I remember watching the show with my grandma. And so, yes, game shows attract an older audience, but also it causes this new generation of game show fans to latch onto these shows and these formats. So thank God they attract an older audience, because what ends up happening is they share it with the next generation beyond that.
that's, absolutely true. And what people also don't realize is, like, I think in syndication, like Meredith Vieira is hosting still Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It didn't go away, right? I think there's still new episodes of these kinds of shows happening. They're just not on the regular schedule. Yeah.
No, Jimmy Kimmel is now hosting Millionaire when they do Millionaire. Meredith Vieira does have a show. She has a wonderful show, actually, called 25 Words or Less, which is one of the best game shows to come along in the past decade. It's I really don't like phrases like this, but it's really a good thing to entice people to watch a show. If you like Password, if you like Pyramid, you'll like 25 Words or Less. It is a very well done, very entertaining word association game. It's based on a board game from the 1990s, and they've started churning out new editions of this board game because of the success of the show. But it's just a really well done, really simple, really easy to follow game of word association and communication, and it's fantastic. And Meredith Vieira, that's one of the big surprises and yet not surprises, is the fact that this woman left journalism and became a really good game show host, and a very successful, very entertaining woman to watch as a game show host, to switch careers like that and shift gears very abruptly. But at the same time, you look back at TV's past, and who hosted the game shows in the 1950s and the 1960s? Well, Mike Wallace and Hugh Downs.
Right.
Mike Wallace hosted The Big Surprise and Who Pays, and you had Hugh Downs hosting Concentration for about a decade.
Yeah, and also you have like celebrities, sometimes actors. Look at Alec Baldwin. I think he's going to be hosting a new game show called Is This Loaded, which is
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that's I think has kind of come from the social media era is a lot of the decision makers, I should specify that. A lot of the decision makers are concerned with spreading awareness, spreading relevance right away, and knowing that there's going to be an audience built into a format. So there's I've been told, I'm never in the pitch meetings, I'm not on that level of game show production, but I've been told that there are frequently people in the meetings for proposing a new game show. So who's going to host this? They want to know the host before they even buy the show. And the decision about who to hire as a host, often what factors into it is what kind of presence they have on social media, who's following them on social media, who are their followers, how many followers do they have, who's going to be enticed to watch. And I get it, but also at the same time, the thing is, if you hire a host for their fan base and you put a show on the air because of who your host is, that's going to work, but it's going to work for one episode. People will watch it once because of who the host is, but the thing about a game show is the game is the star of the show.
Yep.
If the game doesn't have legs, people aren't going to watch it more than once. So I get it, but also there's a reason that it doesn't work.
That's why I wanted to get your take on post-Trebek Jeopardy. I think they absolutely went with the right decision of Ken Jennings. I mean, I thought Ken Jennings was absolutely the right host, but the show still was okay under Mayim Bialik, and it was actually watchable under Aaron Rodgers in a way. But yeah, because the show, right? What were your thoughts, post Trebekistan?
The game is the star. I think Ken was the right choice because Jeopardy is a very different animal in the world of game shows, and I think one of the things that has made Jeopardy work is the ability to believe that the person presenting this information knows the information. this goes back to Art Fleming. Art Fleming used to say that people would tap him on his shoulder in restaurants and ask him to settle arguments for them. They'd be having some sort of disagreement about a fact at one of the other tables, and they would see Art Fleming was in the restaurant, and they'd reason, oh, well, Art Fleming will know this. So that is the perception of the host of Jeopardy going all the way back to the 1960s. And so the reason Ken Jennings was a great choice was, here's a guy that won 74 games of Jeopardy as a contestant. You can watch Jeopardy and believe that this guy reading the clues would be able to give the correct answer and has a lot of sense and a lot of deep knowledge about what he's telling the contestants and what he's telling the viewers. So I think Ken was a perfect choice for that. And he's somebody that the fans already knew. And he was somebody, and again, this goes back to that social media presence. You know, Ken has a presence on social media. Ken is a published author and became a published author as a result of Jeopardy. So Ken came, it's full circle. Ken had an audience for his projects after he was a contestant on Jeopardy, and now Ken brings that audience with him to come on to Jeopardy and become the host. And so, yeah, it's a perfect. The seed got planted 25 years ago, and now they're making the best of it by making him the host of the show. Not 25 years ago. I think I jumped it a little bit, maybe 22 years ago. But yeah, I mean, you're looking, and it's easy to forget that. It's so crazy how the passage of time speeds by. It's been more than 20 years since Ken was on Jeopardy.
Wow. Okay, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Because I actually wrote a song called Jeopardy Ken. And it was played on the Dr. Demento show. Quite honestly, Jeopardy, and it was to the Beatles' Bungalow Bill, and it was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
Jeopardy Ken," because and that was a long time ago. So I guess it was probably 2 decades. But let me ask you, you've written all these books about Bill Cullen and Alan Ludden and folks like that. Is there an Art Fleming book in you? Whatever happened? Nobody talks about it. Everybody. Alex Trebek. Nobody remembers that Art Fleming was Jeopardy for so many years.
I'm not going to say never say never. I'm not going to say no, never say never. I'm not. I'm not going to say never say never as a double or triple negative. I'm not going to say no to the idea of Art Fleming. Here's the tricky part about writing a book, and this is already something that's come up with writing one of my other books. When I wrote, and hold on, I always have these at the ready in case we want to do these. When I wrote my book about Dennis James, okay, Dennis James, Lifetime of Firsts, available wherever you find books online. When I started writing that one, his wife said at the very beginning of it, "Who are you going to talk to? Everybody my husband knew is dead." And yeah, I think I only interviewed maybe 5 or 6 people for that book. On the other hand, when I wrote my book about Bill Cullen, Quizmaster, now available in its second edition, people came out of the woodwork to say, yeah, I knew Bill, I worked with him, and his wife gave me a slew of people that he knew and worked with, and I was able to interview them. And for the second edition, I was still tracking down people who knew Bill. A lot of Bill's friends have been blessed with long lives. So you're able to put together a good book with that.
Well, let me ask you as a writer, which is easier, having just 4 or 5 interviews to incorporate into the book and then everything else is just research, or having to corral 36 interviews and sources and things and write a book and put that all together in something that isn't 700 pages?
To my experience, corralling makes it easier. Having scores of interviews makes it a lot easier because when you're able to talk to people who knew the subject of the book very, very well and very, very personally, when you have a lot of people to grab from, you're able to get a better sense of what was important in that person's life and what doesn't matter. So you can discard certain facts because they may be relevant to that person's life, but you find out, okay, that's not the most important thing. That's not something to fixate on. But as you're interviewing more and more people, when you hear them touch on the same subjects repeatedly, you think to yourself, okay, that's something that I need to mention for the book. That's something that's worth talking about with this subject.
Oh, can I ask why was Dennis James your first? Which was your first book about game shows?
My first book about game shows actually was. Hold on. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad I did this. This Day in Game Show History. That was my first book in game shows, and that's a very different one because it's not a biography. When I first decided to write game shows, I was inspired by a series of books called Uncle John's Bathroom Reader, which is a series of books that are just brief articles on a variety of subjects. And I thought it would be interesting to write a series of essays about the history of game shows. So that was the first book that I wrote. It turned into, this was the great thing. I was able to pad my resume in a way that I wasn't expecting. I thought it would be a feather in my cap to write one book. But with all the photos and with all the text submitted to the publisher said this isn't going to fit in one book. So he split it up into 4 books.
Whoa.
And so right away I could say, oh, yes, I'm the author of 4 books on the history of game shows, having just written one that turned out to be a beast.
Who's your publisher, by the way? Was it Bear Manor? Who's your publisher?
Bear Manor Media, yes, a wonderful publisher who I would recommend to anybody who's looking to write about pop culture, especially esoteric pop culture, or pop culture that has become esoteric. What I always point out to people was the same month that I got published for the first time by Bear Manor Media, the other book that they had come out was a biography of Jay Silverheels.
The Lone Ranger guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the kind of publisher they are. Those are the kinds of books that they'll publish. So, yes, if there's a pop culture specialty that you want to write a book on, reach out to Bear Manor Media. They might be able to help you out and send you on your way to becoming an author.
And are they the publisher of most or all of your other book where you do
all
these?
The only one, and outside, another publisher got in touch with me about writing Game Shows FAQ. Another fine book in the Adam Nedeff family of game show books, and the only one that I don't have a card for. Yeah, Game Shows FAQ is from another publisher, but Bear Manor Media has been a wonderful, supportive partner in my endeavor for the past decade, I'm looking forward to continuing to churn stuff out for them.
So let me ask you, what is something that we wouldn't expect about Alan Ludden? You wrote a book about him. He was married to Betty White. He, of course, did Password all those years, often with her on the panel. Tell us a story about Alan Ludden.
He's a big advocate for the youth of America. Alan was not just an advocate for boosting education, but was also just a big advocate for respecting kids and doing things to benefit them. Alan spearheaded some legislation in the state of Connecticut to boost the prison sentences for drug dealers who sold to minors. For example, he had a radio show called Mind Your Manners. And the show, Mind Your Manners, the premise of the show was a panel of teenagers, and he specifically cast the popular kids in school. And the point of it was a show where teenagers could write to for advice, and the popular kids in school, the ones who had their own cliques and the ones that the other kids secretly wanted to be, would respond and give advice to the ones who they probably wouldn't talk to in school, or the ones that were, the ones who were too shy. It was a wonderful premise for a show, and he ended up making contact with a kid who was in juvenile hall for a drug offense, and it led to this legislation that boosted the sentences for drug dealers who focused on minors. He also wrote a series of books called Plain Talk. And it was very straightforward advice for young people. And it's actually rather shocking to read these books now and read some of the advice that he gives to them. One of them was a book called Plain Talk for Women Under 21. So the target audience was women in their late teens, girls in their late teens. And there's a section of this book where Alan talks about why he's against the idea of saving it for marriage, which, how many books do you think people were writing about that in the 1940s?
Wow.
But he writes this whole passage in this book for teenage girls where he says a woman who stays away from men is going to be emotionally underdeveloped by the time she decides to settle down and start finding a relationship that'll last. Whereas a woman who plays the field is going to have a well-rounded series of experiences with a lot of different men that are going to give her a guideline to what actually matters to her and what she's actually attracted to and who she's actually attracted to. So, Alan's advice was, go nuts, ladies.
Yeah, I think we know that he and Betty were probably going on it long before they were, He's probably smelling his fingers every time he did. No, I don't know what
Yeah.
that means. What about? Let's see. Who you've written about Bill Cullen? Any cool, funny Bill Cullen stories?
Mel Brooks had a fabulous story. I didn't get a chance to talk to Mel Brooks, but just in the last year, Mel Brooks has suddenly been telling this story about Bill Cullen. Mel had been a guest on one of Bill's game shows in the late 1960s, and the thing that you hear about Bill a lot, which is sort of presented as an odd fact about Bill, is Bill had polio, and Bill had limited mobility as a result of that. I find that the severity of his illness is a little over exaggerated. Like you'll see people online to this day say Bill couldn't walk, or he had to walk with assistance, or he had to walk with a cane. And I have raw footage of Bill doing shoots for Good Morning America when they interviewed him, and you see Bill walking. And basically, the severity of Bill's disability is, if you didn't know what was wrong with him, you would think his foot's asleep. That's as
Oh,
bad as it
so he
looks.
limped a little.
But
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
he limped a little. But the fact that he was disabled was something that was not commonly shared with the public. Bill said later that he didn't want it to be a gimmick. He didn't want it to be a selling point. I'm the host who's disabled. I'm the host who bravely overcame it. He didn't want to sell it for himself. So he really, really kind of downplayed the fact that he had this disability. Well, as a result, Mel Brooks did not know that Bill Cullen was disabled.
Oh,
So they come to a point in the show where there's a break in taping, and Bill gets up to walk over to talk to somebody, and Bill does this limp. And Mel thinks he's doing a funny walk to get a laugh. So he gets up and walks behind Bill in front of the audience and starts doing this flip-floppy walk, making fun of the way Bill is walking, and it gets this laugh. And the other celebrity on the show that day is just looking horrified at him and just yells, "He has polio. Don't do that." And Bill turned around and saw what he was doing. And so Mel has already realized, oh my God, I'm making fun of a disabled person. And so just in an instant, Mel wants to crawl into a hole and die. And Bill sees what he's doing. And Bill laughs and hugs him and says, you're the only person that's ever had the guts to make fun of my crippled walk. And he says, everybody is always so careful not to say anything about it. And so Bill actually appreciated it. Bill got a kick out of it in a way that Mel wasn't expecting. So Mel has said in the years since that was the most embarrassing moment of his entire career, but Bill was graceful about it and had a sense of humor about it, and it's become this
that's
favorite
great.
story of Mel Brooks's to share.
Every comedian needs to hear that story. Just because that's what we do. It's like we push the envelope. I was talking about this earlier in the show. We push the envelope and we say shit that we take crap for. And we go too far, and we just want to be told, "Oh, you went a little too far," but we love you for it. That's what we expect you to do. You're being funny, and it's okay. It doesn't always work out like that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So also, you've written a book about Gene Rayburn.
Yes. Gene Rayburn, hold on. Let's get that plug up there. Yes,
Match game, Gene Rayburn, man.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's actually one of my biggest sellers. And this is, we were talking earlier about the reboots of game shows, and this is why I'm grateful that the reboots happened. Was ABC introduced a reboot of Match Game in 2016 that we talked about earlier, and I used to love checking my sales data on Amazon every time they aired an episode of their new version of Match Game. I'm not joking about this. I sold copies of this book every time an episode of Match Game aired, because people would watch it. It would remind them of the old version, I guess, and they would look it up on. They would either Google it or they would go to Amazon and try to find information about it, and they'd find my book. So I don't know who at ABC specifically I should have been sending flowers to, but yeah, there was a stretch of 5 or 6 years where every time ABC aired an episode of Match Game, I sold a chunk of books on Amazon.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So, is there anything about Gene Rayburn that would surprise us?
Hosting Match Game was really the second act of his life and his career, and the first act, somebody used this comparison, and it seems wild to compare him this way, but it really is true when you learn about it. They called Gene Rayburn the Howard Stern of the 1940s, and that is not an exaggeration. Gene was a superstar in radio. Gene was one of the people that really helped pioneer what radio became when television started to take over the world. Gene hosted this show along with another disc jockey named Dee Finch. They had a morning radio show in New York, and it was the invention of the format where it's 4 hours of music, but also the guys are bantering and doing sketches in between.
The zoo,
And
the zoo kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And Gene, they would do weird publicity stunts, like they made themselves available for rent. And so they did this show one morning where the woman who had rented them out had hired them to clean her apartment. So they did this radio show from this apartment that they were cleaning from top to bottom while they were on the air hosting the show. So stunts like they were doing publicity stunts like that.
And we see that all
radio.
the way into Letterman and
Yeah.
Conan too, of that kind of idea. Start with wow.
But yeah, Gene Rayburn was absolutely the king of New York radio for a stretch of about 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Just a superstar, and like you said, the zoo format. He was one of the guys that turned radio into what it became after television took its place.
I got to read your Gene Rayburn book, probably before all the others, except you have done a book about one of the most legendary programs in all of television history. I think you know which one I'm about to mention. It is The Gong Show. You're not the only person to write about The Gong Show, but what did you contribute to Gong Show lore? What did you dig up that hasn't been in the movies, what hasn't been in other people's books about Chuck Barris and so forth? What did you find?
I found that pretty much was not telling the truth about the CIA, although there's still a surprise there, which was, okay, so Chuck writes this book where he claims that he was a CIA agent and assassin for hire during the time that he was producing game shows, and the game shows that he created were his front for the killings. And having talked to members of his staff and talked to people who were there at the time, no. But one of these surprises that I discovered along the way was possibly Chuck's motive/inspiration for writing this book was, oddly enough, he did apply for a job at the CIA in the late 1950s and made it far enough along in the process that for a brief period, he had access to certain rooms of the CIA offices. And eventually he got an offer from ABC Network, and he went in the ABC Network direction instead of the CIA direction. But Chuck actually did almost become a CIA agent. So
not quite the same as being being an assassin, though. Okay.
Yeah, but the funny thing was the way his staff reacted to it was they all read this book, and one of his staffers, Mike Metzger, who only passed away very, very recently, and was a wonderful man. It was great talking to him. But Mike Metzger was one who said he kept it going for Chuck. Because what all the staffers that I interviewed said was, for years afterwards, especially after that book came out and after the movie came out, you would mention that you had worked on The Gong Show or that you would work on The Dating Game. That you mentioned that you worked for Chuck Barris, and people would always say, "So was he?" And Mike Metzger said, I would always answer by saying something like, "Oh no, that story's not true." It's the only really weird thing about Chuck was he never came in on Thursdays for some reason. I don't know why, but he was never in. And then on Friday morning he would say something about, "Yeah, I had a busy day in Stockholm yesterday." And it's like, wow, why did he fly to Stockholm, Sweden for one day? And Chuck also had this really weird gun in his desk. But other than the weird gun and the fact that he was never in his office on Thursday. But like, you'd see people's eyes just pop out while he was telling the story. And he said that was his way of keeping it up. Was he would say it wasn't true, but then he would drop all these hints in the conversation that, oh yeah, Chuck actually was sneaking off behind our backs. And he said it was fun to do that. And he said he had a chance to tell Chuck before he died, "Oh, by the way, Chuck, I keep this going for you." And Chuck really got a kick out of that he made it a point to keep the story going.
Let me ask him, we're talking to Adam Nedeff, who's obviously the author of all these books about game shows. Do you have a favorite Gong Show segment of all time? Your favorite?
You know what? Yes, there actually is a favorite Gong Show segment of me of all time. The act's name was Wilbur Hall. And it's the thing about Gong Show acts is they never sound like much when you describe them, or they're too abstract. But I'll go ahead and describe this. Wilbur Hall was a violinist who played Pop Goes the Weasel. And the gimmick was throughout the performance, he kept changing up the way that he was playing the song. So he's playing it on the violin with his bow. And at one point, he stops and he changes the way he's playing. So he's holding the bow still and he's moving the violin back and forth. And he's playing Pop Goes the Weasel that way. And at one point, he stands up and he flips the violin upside down and he drags it across the back of the chair. And he's able to produce the sound of Pop Goes the Weasel by dragging the violin across the top of the chair. And that's the thing. He just plays Pop Goes the Weasel continuously, but every time he starts the song over again, he changes the way he's playing it. And
that's great. That's post Hendrix. What? Sorry?
Yeah. And Chuck mentions during the course of his act that this guy is 82 years old. And I was watching this and thinking to myself, it's what a weird thing for an 82-year-old guy to do. So I did some research on 82-year-old Wilbur Hall and found him doing exactly his Gong Show act in a movie from 1930. And it just put a smile on my face, realizing this is a guy who played vaudeville and toured the country, and for a time in his life, made a career out of crisscrossing the country and just playing Pop Goes the Weasel for 3 months, for 3 minutes a night. And this guy watched the Gong Show on TV when it first premiered and thought to himself, I can do my act again. And so he went into the closet, pulled out his old tuxedo, and went down and auditioned to perform his act one more time on television. And that just kind of puts a smile on your face to realize that was the magic of the Gong Show. It wasn't just the fact that they had all these zany, weird acts, but just the idea that everybody got a chance. This guy got one more chance to be a star and be in the spotlight. And anybody had a chance to do it. It's really important to try to contextualize this for the youngins these days. The youngins these days. I'm 42, so I can now say that. But really, the Gong Show was YouTube of 1976. What folks now don't really realize or think about is there was a time when our access to entertainment was 3 networks that were just surrounded by gatekeepers, and that was your only in to get to a wide audience. Today, if you want to attract a wide audience, all you really, really need is a sense of commitment and a phone. And you can produce and you can make whatever, everything that you need is somewhere in your apartment if you want to be discovered now. It wasn't like that in 1976. And the magic of the Gong Show and what it should be celebrated for now is that it was a venue in 1976 where people had access to these these networks, these television networks, that they wouldn't have had access to otherwise. The TV networks were not going to tell you, yeah, come on in, we'll put you on the air, but here was this 30-minute chunk of the day where somebody, the host and creator, actually was saying, yes, come on, you can use my space and perform for a while.
And no, it's I mean, it also goes back to the Apollo before then, and I don't know if Arthur Godfrey had intentionally "quote unquote" bad or weird acts on, but certainly even when they have people like Bill Hung who appears on what was that the voice show, the
American Idol.
American Idol took from the Gong Show because American Idol knows that people want to see someone who knocks them out singing, Susan Boyle, but they also need as a relief a guy who plays Pop Goes the Weasel in weird ways. They need that balance, and they're both
exactly, yeah. And the Gong Show was the same way. Chuck said, the formula was, an occasional good act sprinkled in, and the Gong Show did discover new talent, and the Gong Show did present a forum for new talent. The most conspicuous example would be Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, and Paul really, really did a good job of articulating how important the Gong Show was to his life in interviews later in life. Because here's a way that the Gong Show was different, and here's how it benefited Paul Rubens. A lot of game shows, you've got your one shot at it, and that's it. The Gong Show rules were different. The rule on the Gong Show was you could be on the Gong Show as many times as you wanted. The only catch was you had to audition for the show every time that you wanted to be on it. They weren't just going to give you carte blanche. You had to come in on audition as if you had never been on the show in your life. And also you had to do something different every time you auditioned for the show. And so Paul Reubens kept brainstorming ideas for different acts, and altogether he was on the show 14 times. Now, the motivation to be a contestant on the Gong Show 14 times was this. Chuck Barris was very, very nervous that the show would just run out of acts and that people would stop auditioning for it. So he felt that he needed to have an incentive. And so one of the incentives that he came up with was he made a deal with the performers union, SAG and AFTRA, to pay scale, which is basically minimum wage for a performer in television, which is several $100s. He would pay scale to anybody who was a member of the union. So what that did was it attracted a lot of young, starving artists to the Gong Show to be contestants on the show, because win or lose, because of scale, you knew you were going to get the rent paid that month if you were a contestant on the Gong Show. So Paul Reubens was on 14 times, and he was paid scale for each of his performances. But then Chuck sells the Gong Show rerun package into syndication after 2 years. And the thing about syndication rights is you have to pay royalties to the acts that are on the show if they're members of SAG and AFTRA. So Paul Reubens, as he told the story, he was looking for a day job in 1978 because he wasn't getting the bills paid. And suddenly he gets this huge check in the mail from Chuck Barris, and he had just sold the Gong Show reruns into syndication for the first time. So it was this huge chunk of money accounting for the first few times that Paul Reubens' appearances would rerun on television. And Paul Reubens said the check that he got in the mail was enough to live on for a while. So he called off his search for his second job, and he was able to devote a lot of his time and a lot of his energy to developing his stage show, which is where we get Pee Wee Herman from. And you can say with a straight face, we got Pee Wee Herman because of the Gong Show.
That is so. I love that. And it makes me. I mean, I don't know if you know this story, but it's similar and it's happy and sad at the same time. It's kind of when you were talking about, again, the violin guy from the 1930s and Pee Wee. There's also the story of, and we mentioned Jimmy Kimmel before, that, you know, the street performer Wildman Fisher? Have you ever heard of him from like the Zappa era? And
It's not a name that jumps to mind.
He was never really a star, but he was part of the Frank Zappa label, and Zappa produced his first album, and he was, you know, a very weird kind of outsider singer-songwriter artist, but also impossible to deal with because he was paranoid schizophrenic, but you know, people kept him going, and Rhino recorded him for a while and so forth, and he was forgotten, but because he was so crazy and impossible to deal with, he was also borderline homeless, right? And then years later, when he's just been kind of living hand to mouth, as it were, and he gets on this Jimmy Kimmel Star Search segment that they did probably about 15 years ago now, where just people come on kind of like Gong Show, and suddenly Kimmel announces, oh, here's Larry Fisher. And he does one of his songs, and it actually goes pretty well. And I'm sure Fisher thought, hey, this is going to be my next, I'm going to be known again. I'm going to have this next career. Nothing really comes of it because he's Wildman. But it always sort of broke my heart that he was introduced as just another act. That whether Kimmel himself or any of his staffers knew that this wasn't just some guy with a very funny voice and very weird songs, but this is Wildman Fisher. He is kind of this outsider artist legend. And they're just kind of, well, here's Larry Fisher. Here's our next up. And he does his song and he goes. That kind of hurt me. That it's great that we have this footage, the last really great footage of Wildman Fisher, but at the same time, it's kind of like, you know, if they knew who he was and what he represented back in 1967, you know, or 1971 and stuff.
You know, oddly enough, the one analogy that you can kind of make to the Gong Show there is the unknown comic. And this is, what's funny is because of the success of that character, people have kind of forgotten what the unknown comic was before he was on the Gong Show. The unknown comic was a guy named Murray Langston. And Murray Langston was a rather successful actor for a few years. He did variety shows, he did sitcoms, but Murray Langston was getting a lot of work, and then the worst thing that happens to an actor. He hit a dry spell for a while and he wasn't working. And so the Gong Show was on television and he found out that this is the show that pays scale to the contestants. So if you're a contestant, but he sort of second guessed it and he thought to himself, okay, if my family sees me on the Gong Show, they're going to assume that something's gone way wrong in my life. And it kind of had because he wasn't working. So he came up with this act called The Unknown Comic, and the whole point of The Unknown Comic was he was wearing the bag over his head. People wouldn't realize that our friend Murray is a contestant on the Gong Show. Oh my God, he must have money troubles. So that was why Murray Langston came up with the Unknown Comic Act, was so that people wouldn't see his face when he was a contestant on the Gong Show. And then it caught fire in a way that nothing he had ever done as a performer had caught on. And he said, here I am 45 years later, and I'm still putting that bag on my head for gigs. Like, the unknown comic became a star in a way that Murray Langston hadn't. Yeah.
And he's alive and well. I mean, he's on my
Alive
Facebook
well,
feed. And
has had a great career, yeah.
So let me ask, speaking of careers, we haven't really talked about the fact that you have got jobs behind the scenes in game shows. How did that come about? And what shows have you been on? And what do you actually do?
Well, happily, a lot of the books that I wrote in the first few years fell into the laps of people who made the hiring decisions. And that was entirely the reason that I wrote the books, was game shows are, and a lot of television works this way. A lot of show business works this way. It's who you know, and I didn't have a network of people. So I wrote the books to get my name out there, and it finally did work. In 2016, I got a job offer from somebody who read one of my books and who owned one of my books. So I've worked behind the scenes on shows like Double Dare, College Bowl, Idiot Test, Funny You Should Ask, a lot of shows. So more shows than there are stars in the sky.
But what were you actually do? Like physically, were you?
Yeah.
You weren't stringing lights. Were you in the writers' room? Were you coming up with? What were you doing?
So sometimes I'm hired to write questions. I've worked on shows where I've done graphics. The job that I'm hired for more than any other is researcher. And the simplest way to describe researcher is if you're watching a game show and a contestant gives kind of an iffy answer and the host says, I need a ruling from our judges on this. That's me. I'm judges. Yeah. And the way this works is we spend usually 10 or 11 weeks is the length of the job, but we go through the material that the writers have written, and we read up on the subject of the question, we read up on the fact being asserted in the question, and we verify, is this true, and we verify, is this question written in a way that anything else is correct? And so we have that information ready. We try to gather that info and have it all in one place so people can check it if it comes up. And that's really my job. Is I don't write the questions, but I'm the second set of eyes who looks at the questions and says, okay, is there anything that we missed here? And I dig into it and see if there's any other answer for it.
So if there is this thing like when these shows are actually being taped, putatively live, if we say, so, and then the contestant gives an answer that is kind of on, and it seemingly has to be in like 5 seconds. It has to get into the ear of the moderator of like, is this acceptable or not? Are they literally calling you, or is there time that's extra time that's taken that we just don't see on the air where they give you like 5 minutes or something?
Both. If it's subject matter where I'm comfortable making an instant decision and the contestant's answer is such that I'm able to make an instant ruling on this, I can give them the thumbs up or thumbs down right away. Like, we had a question once. The city, this is not exactly the question, but the gist of it was, it comes from a Native American term meaning the good land. And the answer, as anybody who has seen the movie Wayne's World knows, is Milwaukee. So Milwaukee's name means the good land. And contestant answered Philadelphia. And I just immediately got on the headset and said, call it wrong. We know that's wrong. And that was just because Philadelphia was something that I knew off the top of my head. Philadelphia literally means brotherly love. That's why it's called the city of brotherly love. So in that case, I was able to make an instant ruling and say, yes, this is wrong. In other cases, it is a chunk of time that you don't see. If contestants give an answer that we're not ready for, like we had a question about artificial sweeteners, and it was a show where the contestants wrote their answers, and here's kind of the magic trick to a show where the contestants write their answers. It's the person making the judgment call has a secret screen where we can see what they're writing as they're writing it. And what I noticed was the contestants were not writing the scientific names or the generic names. They were writing brand names. And I looked down and I realized we didn't have anything about brand names. So they were writing down like NutraSweet. And the answer that we had was aspartame. And I'll tell you right this second, I can't remember if aspartame is the same thing as NutraSweet or if it's the other one. But that was one of we had to stop tape while I checked and I saw, okay, is NutraSweet the same as aspartame or is this another?
And if it is, you have to give them that. Yeah. Yeah. I do remember I got really, really angry many years ago. Maybe I'm misremembering this, but there was they were answering a question, a contestant, about an Ibsen play, and the contestant said The Doll's House, and they were marked wrong because it was A Doll's House, and they didn't get it right. But it's a translation of a Swedish name. And to say or to get the article wrong, I was a little pissed. I thought they should have.
The funny thing was they just on Pop Culture Jeopardy, the new spinoff they have on Amazon Prime, they had a clue about a movie, and a contestant gave an answer that they ruled incorrect. And then during a break, they looked it up, and what they found out was the correct response that the incorrect response that the contestant had given was the name that the movie had in its preview screening at a film festival right when it first premiered. So not the name that it had in general release, but like this one screening that it had the first time that was shown to critics. So they flipped the thumb and said, "Okay, yes, you can. We'll give you credit for that." But yeah, translations that's the most interesting problem that we run into sometimes. We had to kill a question about Pandora because of a translation issue that I did not know about this until one of my coworkers dug into it, which is, what did Pandora open?
A box. Or
a box. But it turns out box is the result of a mistranslation. It was actually Pandora's jar. And the problem, and so there was a discussion about this, and the feeling was, okay, the world knows it as Pandora's box, but we can't take it because box is definitely wrong. It was a jar that she opened up. But you can't have the host ask that and say, "Oh, sorry, I know the entire world knows that it's Pandora's box, but it's actually a jar." It's bad television, and that's one of the things that questions get killed for sometimes. Is we're not looking for strictly right or wrong answers. We want engaging material that the audience wants to play along with, and they're satisfied by the payoff of it. So Pandora's jar is the fact, but we didn't use this question because the feeling was, a viewer is going to hate this if they say box and we call them wrong and we explain this technicality. That's going to be bad TV. So we got rid of the question.
What if you allow it, since it's the general, except it's technically wrong. That's what you're saying. Because you can say box is what everybody knows. But by the way, folks, it was actually a jar. But box is technically wrong. So that makes it a difficult. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we have to kill, and that's one of the things that we're looking for, and that's the nuance of doing game shows that I think people would be surprised about when they're talking about questions and answers. We're not strictly looking for facts. We're looking for things that make you, the viewer, talk back to your TV and want to talk back to your TV and feel engaged by it. So if it's one of those situations like that where a viewer is going to be pissed off by the fact, we don't use that fact.
Let me ask just a couple more minutes here with our guest, Adam Nedeff. What show, if you can tell, are you working on now, or will you be working on in the next 3 weeks or months? Which game show are you on, or can you not say?
At this moment, I can say I'm working on Don't Forget the Lyrics for the Fox Network. We're about to tape the new season of that. We'll be going into the studio in April, and I'm not 100% certain when it aired, but the next time that you see new episodes of Don't Forget the Lyrics, you can say that I worked on that. Also, during the month of April, Game Show Network will be debuting 2 game shows that I worked on that shot last year, Bingo Blitz and a reboot of Tic Tac Dough.
Is Bingo Blitz actually like bingo?
With trivia, and your host is the lovely and talented Valerie Bertinelli.
Oh my God! Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So I guess you took that job one day at a time. But thank you very much. And what book or books are you currently working on?
Right now, I've got a book coming together for the museum that I'm involved with in Rochester. The Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, is developing a wing of the museum called the National Archives of Game Show History. And actually, if you go to their website right now, you can see some of the projects that we've already worked on. We've done a series of oral histories with legendary figures behind the scenes in the world of game shows. And so that's been a lot of fun. But the plan is in 2026 or 2027, we are going to introduce a physical space dedicated to the history of game shows. And right now I'm working on a museum book, basically, a book that ties into the museum and some of the things that have been donated to them.
You must feel so unbelievably lucky that literally the thing that you loved as a child, you are not only got a job in, but you've tentacled your way into all these different related jobs that are still about the thing you love. That is so ideal. I'm so fucking jealous of you. It's amazing.
I love game shows, and I'm very fortunate to say that they love me back. And I'm glad that I've been able to make something of this.
But let me ask you, before I let you go, though, I did also notice, are you I'm not, but are you a wrestling fan? Because I feel like you've written about...
I am a wrestling fan. I'm a lot more old school. I do follow the current product a bit, but I've always been a fan of the old school wrestling, the territory days, as they're called now, when you had different regions of the country that had their own pro wrestling. And so I have a certain affection for the different styles of wrestling that you saw in those different territories.
And you've written about, that's what I'm saying, you've written books about the WWE.
Not book. I've written... The books that I've written about wrestling are more collections of columns that I've written, but I've been writing for a website called 401 Mania for about 17 years now. Wow. And it's really strictly a hobby, the writing that I do about wrestling. It was something I did to take my mind off the fact that I really, really hated being a telemarketer for the 3 months of my life that I was a telemarketer. It was they had an opening for writers, and so I submitted for this so I would have something to do that I would actually look forward to after another damn day of being a telemarketer. But I've been doing that for 17 years, and it's really, I just write recaps and reviews and opinions of wrestling shows from the 1980s, and just... Here's what I thought of the show, here's why I thought this worked, here's why I thought this didn't work, and here's what became of the guys who were involved in the match.
So again, it's a level of nostalgia, but also a level of fun, and I mean, it's so cool. So let me ask the last question for Adam Nedeff is, you've got your little corner of the world where you write the books, where you go and you help with produce these game shows and such. What are your hobbies, if any? Excuse me. What do you do outside of this world? Are you married? Do you have kids? Do you go snowboarding? Do you do anything else?
I have a dog. She is curled up and sound asleep right now, but I have a dog named Olive, and she takes up a lot of my time. She's my whole world at the moment. But beyond that, I have friends over the apartment for game nights every now and then. So even when I'm not working on game shows, naturally, games to some degree are some part of my life. So there's that. And also, I'm one of those rare people that made a New Year's resolution and kept it. I resolved last year that I was going to read more, and I really am doing it. And I've amassed a pretty huge collection of books just in the last year. There are worse things to be addicted to, but my current addiction is a website called thriftbooks.com, which is a website that sells used books, and there's a reader rewards system whereby you get free books as you buy more and more books from them. So I've just been buying books left and right, and I've gotten completely addicted to buying books from this site, thriftbooks.com, which, by the way, does have my books available as well.
That's right. We'll, at the very, very end, we'll mention what some of those books are so people can go and find you and do it. But what's the best book you've read in the past, year then? I mean, there's one thing about buying books, another about reading them, and then yeah.
You know what I got hooked on, and the funniest thing is I'm appreciating the TV that my mother watched more and more. And my mother was a huge fan of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and I never watched it when I was a kid because I figured not my thing. And now what I've begun reading more and more is collections of Alfred Hitchcock short stories. Not short stories that he wrote, but Alfred Hitchcock had this magazine, Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine. Yeah, and they regularly publish paperback collections of the best stories from these, and so that's what I've been snapping up left and right in the past year, is these collections of short stories from the magazine. So not a specific author, but just that genre of short stories that fit the mold what Alfred Hitchcock Presents would have had. So that's been a lot of the reading that I've done in the past year.
And the last, I promise I will let you go, but the last question for Adam Nedeff is, of all the shows we've talked about, all the game shows, including the Gong Show, including some of the weirder ones, when I was looking this up, apparently there really, really was a game show, not just a couple of years ago, called Hurl. Have you ever come across this show, and what do you think about it?
I have heard of Hurl. It's one of the stranger ideas that I've ever heard of for a game show, but not the strangest. I can tell you what my favorite...
Well, first explain what Hurl is. Hurl is...
It's intestines puke.
They ran for a season. They eat to excess and try not to vomit.
It's quite an elevator pitch, but I mean it's the evil twin of Hot Ones. But yeah, it's a strange idea for a game show, but it's not even the strangest one I've heard. I went over to Ireland last year for a production, and I was watching TV very, very late at night, and I watched a game show from Great Britain from the early 1970s, and it was the strangest show I had ever seen in my life, and it was called The Golden Shot. And this thing was, as I found out, it was a big, big success in Great Britain during the 1960s and 1970s. The show was called The Golden Shot. Let me explain what The Golden Shot was. In the studio, there was a camera that had a loaded crossbow attached to it. The cameraman operating that camera was wearing a blindfold. They would call a viewer at home, and the viewer at home would see a series of targets on the screen. And the viewer at home would have to tell the cameraman, move left, move left, move left. Okay, now tilt the camera up, up, up. No, that's too high. Lower the camera, lower the camera. Okay, now fire. And the cameraman would fire the crossbow whenever the contestant at home told them to fire the crossbow. And you won cash and prizes for every target you were able to hit.
Wow! I mean, that isn't as crazy as Hurl. I mean, it's crazy. That's nuts.
Now, the best part of this is, yes, there was a live studio audience in the studio where this blindfolded man was operating a crossbow. But...
Okay, you're right. That is crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was a live studio. Yeah. Humans. Oh, that... Did anybody ever get hurt?
No. No problems, no issues at all.
Genius. I love it. I figured, that almost sounds like one of those Japanese shows from the 1970s. The Japanese game shows are... We don't even have time to talk about those. But, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking wonderfully with Adam Nedeff. Get his books from Bear Manor Media, but you can also get them from Amazon. Do you have a website? Is there a place people can find you? Or
on Facebook, I have a page, Game Show Author Adam Nedeff. That's probably the easiest place to find me if you're on Facebook. Go ahead and pop in anytime you want.
Well, yes, and we thank you so much for popping into the Daverhood, Adam Nedeff, on Dave's Gone By. Happy gaming to you. This was a great, great interview. Thank you so much, my man.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Adam Nedeff in the Daverhood live on this Saturday morning. It is March 8th, 2025. It didn't occur to me, a loaded crossbow with a studio audience. That'd be a great job for an assassin. That's a Chuck Barris idea, where you have someone at home and you have the cameraman turn all the way around to the audience and target like the Russian spy in the audience and say, fire the crossbow now, right? Anywho, it is, oh my God, it's 25 after 11, almost Eastern time. And here I was thinking I wasn't going to be able to even do 3 hours of the program and get through it with my head cold. But that was such a wonderful interview, and we thank Adam Nedeff so much. And we have so much more to do on this episode of Dave's Gone By. It always happens when we miss a week, because I was in New York last week, and then I get on here, and it's like I gotta do this and this and this, and we're going to go until noon Eastern time today with more show. So we still have our Colorado Limerick of the Damned to do. We have Dave's Big Dictionary coming up with the word dry dock, and I don't want to. Oh, and Greeley Times. Let's do a little bit of Greeley Times. The missus is not with me today, alas, so I'll only do a couple of these because it's not the same without her and the noise makers and the noise machine and stuff. But Greeley Times is based on a column that is in the Greeley Tribune newspaper, still has been running for many, many years. People in northern Colorado, when they see something funky or weird going on in their neighborhood, call the cops. And the cops, of course, take down the information. The funniest, most ridiculous calls to the police station are then gathered by folks at the Tribune, the identifiers stripped out, and then shared once a week in the pages of the newspaper. So, we begin today's Greeley Times with, let me get my glasses, ho ho. All right, we start with a caller on 23rd Avenue in Greeley, Colorado, saw a man wearing a hoodie and flashing his genitalia toward traffic. Well, I guess we know his horn works. Let me get this is better. Here's a horn. There you go. What? We have another phone call? Let me get the Pooh phone. Hey, oh, by the way, Pooh, how's your constipation going? Oh boy, he's not. You're not doing too well. No. Listen, here, let me tuck you in my pocket. And if you have to go, I mean, you're literally the same color as my shirt. So if you need to go in the pocket, it's okay. I'll wash it. Nobody will ever see. Thank you. All right. I'll give you a little squeeze. See if that helps. Anything? No, not yet. Oh, I need corn. Well, okay. After the show, I'll make you a lunch with some corn and maybe some Mexican food, some beans. Yes, please. Okay. I think Pooey will be okay. A caller. We have another caller. Ooh. We can also hit the screen of the laptop and make it jump like that. We have another call. This call is a caller who reported 2 men smoking and panhandling at a Mexican grocery store on 11th Street. So much for the Mexican food there. When people would refuse to give them money, the 2 men would blow smoke in their faces. And let's face it, in our current culture, they really have nothing to lose because they're going to be going back to Mexico anyway. So, anywho, do we have another phone call? By gosh, we do. Let me grab the coffee phone. Yeah, hello. Where are you? Oh, a caller at C Street, letter C, in Greeley, Colorado, saw an injured raccoon near an intersection. The caller was worried a pet or child might have tried approaching it. So, I know, it's not that funny, is it? I mean, okay, I don't know why you call the cops, but basically if you're worried the raccoon might have rabies or just be a raccoon and bite someone, or having already bit someone, writ on. Okay, I'm moving on to the next one. A caller at a restaurant on 11th Avenue said a man came into the store, took an employee's phone, and threw it in the street. Then he went back inside and threw a soda at the employee while calling her names. He took off running, and police later found out it was the employee's ex-boyfriend. Well, there you go. That is a relationship that has gone rather sour. And you know he still loves her. You know, he wouldn't bother if it was just like, oh, God, I'm out of that relationship. I like her, and I miss sleeping with her on Saturday nights, but God, no, this is more like if he's running into the store, taking her phone, smashing it up, then, going after other employees for no reason, or maybe because he thinks she's with them, calling her names, running away. Yeah, he's still got it for you. Honey, he still loves you. And take your chances. Anyway, let's take another phone call. A caller where? At the Greeley Mall said a man with a face tattoo was, quote, looking for problems. I'm guessing that's kind of redundant. Anybody with a face tattoo doesn't really need any more problems. I think they've already chosen to show whatever their problems are in life. Okay. This is an empathetic no alert. So it's an alert. We'll have some alert noises. And this is new for us. We have occasional alerts. We have a Fort Lupton alert. We sometimes have a chicken alert. This is now an empathetic no alert, and you will see why. A caller on 42nd Avenue said that she donated a box of books earlier that day. Then she realized she left her phone in one of the boxes, to which we all have this moment of like heart going, no! Because we all have that feeling, that empathy. We're like, we left it on the bus. I forgot the thing there. We went to I left it back at the hotel. We feel for you, ma'am. We get it. We've been there. There's this lovely section of this book that I just happened to be reading now or listening to in the car called The Namesake by a very fine writer named Jhumpa Lahiri. And there's this section early in the book where this woman has bought all these gifts that she's going to give to her family back in India when she goes to visit. And she's so wrapped up in the daydream of finally seeing this family that she hasn't seen in years and what they're going to be like when they open her presents and she gets to see them and hug them and talk to them again, that she kind of gets off the bus in a daze and leaves all her stuff on the bus, right? And as the bus is pulling away, she's like, and they're banging on the wall of the thing. And what's rather nice, and I don't want to spoil it for you, because it's all just in one chapter early in the book, but just one of those things where her husband comes home, calls the MTA, and the next day, they reported it, they give it back, they get it back, and it works out really well. And it's one of the first times that she feels nice about having moved to America from Calcutta, because they're in Boston and the winters are blechy, and she feels like a complete fish out of water, and she's having to go along with all these American customs as opposed to the Indian ones. This is the first moment when she has a feeling of conviviality and happiness about American ways and values and customs, that she could leave all her stuff on a bus and get it back within 24 hours. It's kind of a nice part of the book. Anyway, back to our Greeley Times. Oh, another phone call. Let's see, where's this from? A caller at a gas station on 9th Street said a man with his pants down, that already tells you everything, don't it? A man with his pants down was acting strange and refusing to leave. Sort of sounds like my third date with my wife. But anywho, moving on, a caller at a restaurant at an unknown address, I guess this restaurant does not want to be identified, said a woman who worked next door came in and threw a pretzel at him. Why? Because it was overcooked. And it's funny, I was just talking about this 2 weeks ago on the show, of the way you used to get pretzels in New York from the cart people. And you always were taking your chances, and 2 times out of 3, they were hard and cold, and you could barely bite into them. But when you got a really good pretzel with a mustard, it was beautiful. And here it is, this woman took action. Now pretzels are what, $3, $5 from the stupid cart people, or $7 at Auntie Anne's? And she's like, I'm paying for this, and you give me this? And she throws the pretzel at him because it's overdone. Good for you, ma'am. Good for you. Or as a Steely Dan would say, that is using your pretzel logic. By the way, we have an elsewhere, because as part of Greeley Times, we often load in one story that isn't from Colorado at all. We have one odd piece of news from somewhere else in the world, somewhere else in the universe, just because it's odd, crazy news that we like to share. So this week's bit of outsider news is actually from a lot closer to where we are right now, Princeton, New Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, if you thought the worst thing to come out of Princeton, New Jersey was a bunch of boring textbooks, think again. A week or so ago, Matthew Hurtgen, age 31, killed his younger brother. Wait for it. He killed his younger brother. This came a few months after Hurtgen posted a poem on Facebook that included lines about, quote, knives sharpening and, quote, blood oozing out of his eyes. All right? So we know this guy's a poet and he knows it. And we know that he has some violence issues that are, in a healthy way, coming out of his poetry, but I guess not cathartic enough that it would keep him from killing in real life. So, this guy kills his brother. How? Police say that Hurtgen used a blade and a golf club to slash and beat his brother Joseph to death. Not only that, here it comes, officers found a bloody knife, a fork, and a plate near the victim's body. Why did they find a knife, a fork, and a plate? Because the preppy Princeton murderer, and not Princeton University, he just happened to live in Princeton, this preppy Princeton murder suspect ripped out his brother Joe's eyeball, which is now missing and presumed eaten. Yeah. After his snack, Hurtgen called the cops to report a fire and a body. Police quickly realized he set the fire. He was the culprit, especially since he also set fire to the family cat. I feel like Keith Olbermann at the moment. I sound like it. As one policeman told the New York Post, quote, it was gruesome, way overboard, unquote. You think he ate his brother's eyeball and set fire to the cat? Hurtgen, a wealthy Ivy League silver spooner, this is like not an MS-13 thing. This is just like crazy-ass white kid possibly on like meth or something. I don't know. And I do like this. I love this wording by the New York Post. He was an Ivy League silver spooner who was, quote, born on first base. Isn't that a great analogy? Isn't that just a wonderful metaphorical way of showing someone who's got like the leg up that DEI and CRT are supposed to give everybody else? Right? He was there. You know, born in Princeton, or at least living in Princeton, wealthy parents, got everything, all set up, and boom. This is the way he behaves. He's been charged with murder and faces life imprisonment. I will say that I'm surprised Princeton University did not want to enroll Matthew Hurtgen after his spree, since they would gain not only a new student, but because of his digestion habits, he'd be bringing in an extra pupil. Oh, the eyes have it here on Dave's Gone By. We're doing Greeley Times here on this Saturday, March 8th. Let's do one more Greeley piece of news. A caller at an ice skating rink on 8th Avenue, I wonder which one, Ice House, said a man urinated on his vehicle's tire in the parking lot. Yeah, man. I guess it's better than doing it on the ice. Watch out where the skaters go, and don't you eat. No, wait. Watch out there. It isn't nice. Don't you eat that yellow ice. Okay, I try. That's all I can do is try. Here's one more. A caller at a redacted address. A lot of times I won't publish the address or an unknown address. This is one where the caller gave the address, and then the police told the police later, please don't give my address. A caller we're going to see why. A caller at a redacted address reported driving by and seeing a man and a woman in the garage smoking what looked like a meth pipe. The caller was concerned because he also noticed 2 young children in the garage. Well, who knows? Maybe they were students of mathematics. Yeah, it's time to stop. This has been Greeley Times here on Dave's Gone By.
Mr. Horace Greeley was no fool.
No, he was not.
I'm sure that you'll agree with me that Greeley was no fool.
What he is getting at is that Mr. Greeley was no fool.
If
Yes, we're well into the 979th episode of the Dave's Gone By Facebookio, Podcastio, Programmio of the stream with me, Dave Lefkowitz. I gotta say, I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to give what my mom would call a kanina hurrah. But having done this program, this episode now for about 2.5 hours, I'm feeling better. I feel better now. Now that I've been taxing myself and exhausting myself for 2.5 hours than I did when I started the show. My eyes are clearer, my voice is better. I feel like I'll probably crash at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I should keep the show going. I'm feeling good for the first time in like 3 days. And it's because of the show. It's because of you guys, because of what I'm doing right here on this program every Saturday from 9 until noon or thereabouts. Remember that davesgoneby.com is the official website of the show, that archive.org has a Dave's Gone By channel with the same content, that our audio archives are at castbox.fm. We have a channel there too. We also have a YouTube page for Dave's Gone By. We have our Facebook page. A lot of it is the same content, of course. And we have our Twitter feed, Radio Dave 2, as well as my Instagram page, Dave. Is my Instagram Dave Lefkowitz or David Lefkowitz? I never remember. Hold on. Let me see. I'm going to do this real quick. My Instagram page is david.lefkowitz. There it is. You can find me, Lefkowitz, david.lefkowitz. I really should remember that and note it down. Anywho, take a note that we still have more to do. We've got our Colorado Limerick of the Damned and our friends of the Daverhood, not to mention Bunion Watch and Dave's Big Dictionary. Let's get these bunions out. Let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past couple of years, on most of the episodes, I share with you, because I'm that kind of guy, I show you the bunions on my feet. So let's do this, just to check and see if they're the same shape, if they've changed in any appreciable way or unappreciable way. So let me start. I usually start with my right foot bunion. Let's get off on a different foot, shall we? I'm going to lower this down. Here we go. Da-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Okay, I'm going to put here's my left foot. My left foot has obviously a very noticeable bunion, but at the same time, this is the smaller one of my 2 feet. Here's my big old curly toe there. You can see, look at it. Look at the mound, the shape. It's a little scaly. Could use a little moisturizer there. A little white when I pull the foot down like that, more normatively red. What do you think, folks? How's that? Is that a very, very cool bunion or what? I can bring it a little closer to the camera. There we are for, a little tough to do here. Bunion Watch. And now, bum, bugga, bum, bugga, bum, bugga, bum, what you've all been waiting for, the bunion of my other foot. Here it is. I can't even see what the screen is showing now. Here it is. Wow! Look at that! Holy shit! That's a look how red and bulbous it looks. Oh my God, it doesn't look that disgusting on my actual foot, but on camera. What's up with that? I need to see a doctor. Oh my God! I'm telling you, it really looks ginormous. It looks like I have a pimple on my bunion. This is the most surprising Bunion Watch I think we've done since we started the show, or since we started Bunion Watch 2.5 years ago on this program. Whoa! Wait, I'm going to do this a little bit more. Here we go. Raise this up one more time. Jesus Christ! Whoa, I hope you're not having lunch and looking at this. Ladies and gentlemen, that. Woo! Holy mackerel! This is the first time I've noticed that my bunion has gotten sort of bigger and weirder and more pulled off to the side, more distended. Ooh. It may be time for old Dave to see a podiatrist. Good Lord. I mean, I've long... really, I should have seen a psychiatrist for decades ago, but this is scary. This is... Whoa. Bunion Watch. You never know on this program what segment is going to be like the most revelatory. we had this wonderful interview with Adam Nedeff. Sure, we just did Greeley Times. I talked about stuff. I talked about Columbia University. But Bunion Watch, wow! Anyway, let's talk about something else. Pooey, how's Pooey doing? Are you still constipated, Pooey? Oh, God! I want to die! Ah! Wow. Pooey not doing very well. Is there anything I can do? Drill a hole in me! It has to come out! Oh, God! Well, Pooey, there is, if you can sort of see there, Pooey does have a little bit of a hole in his, this looks really obscene, hole in his bottom. So, Pooey, you just have to concentrate, think river-like thoughts, think enema. Take her. Here, I know what I'll do. Here we go. I have a cup of water here. I'm going to lower you into the water. Take it in. There we go. And now hold it. And when you're ready, you're going to expel the water. And with it, that'll probably function sort of like a siphon, kind of like a real good enema. And we'll get, I promise you, by the end of the show, you'll be, oh, God! Oh, do you feel really bad, Pooey? Oh, I feel like shit! Anywho. Oh, it's time for Dave's Big Dick Dictionary. This has to do with finding a word, randomly I'm in the sillies portion of the show now. I've been talking nonstop for 2 hours and 45 minutes. This is when the silly part comes out that I can't help because I'm just like overtired and sick and like I'm just going to be nuts. Earlier in the program, Pooey randomly helped me find a word in this Merriam-Webster dictionary to talk about. This was not pre-planned. It was completely at random over thousands and thousands. There are 75,000 definitions in this book. So there's a 1 in 75,000 shot at finding a word. And the last time we did this, we randomly landed, and this is absolutely true, on the word enema. And I did this whole discourse on how important that word was in my life, even though I've never had one. And it was the perfect word. This time, I was like, oh, God. Oh, boy. I don't even know what the hell to talk about. But then something came to mind. So, ladies and gentlemen, on this episode of Dave's Gone By, this iteration of Dave's Big Dictionary, we'll be talking about dry dock. Extra, tell all about it. It's Dave's Big Dictionary. Dave's Big Dictionary. So here's the word dry dock. And I actually want to find it maybe more of an online dictionary here. Let's see what they have to say, because there's not that much of a definition in the actual book. So, a dock that can be kept dry during the construction or repair of ships. Let's see if there's anything. I don't really have a lot about it. First known use was in 1854, right, in the meaning defined above, as a verb, so it can dry dock something. And then, but the noun goes back to 1626. Here we go. Oh, I kind of scroll up to find the whole thing. The ship is in dry dock, which feels almost more like an adjective, doesn't it? What else? Or you can place something in a dry dock. The yacht is believed to be dry docked at a Metro Detroit marina. Okay. So they have these, not really about it, unfortunately. So not the easiest word for me to talk about, because I don't really know anything maritimal. And don't know about ships and stern and port and bow and bosun and these words. I read books about the sea and I still wouldn't know what half the terminology meant. But I do remember growing up that there was, and I'm going to look this up, Dry Dock Savings Bank. Does that ring a bell? Dry Dock Savings Bank was a bank, this is according to Wiki, that operated in New York City from 1983 until it suffered from bank failure only 9 years later in 1992. And yet I remember it very well. It was a merger of Dollar Savings Bank, which I vaguely remember, and and Dry Dock Savings Bank, which both dated back to the 1800s. So there was a Dry Dock way, way before then. That makes sense. Dry Dock had 30 branches at that point, okay? They were sold to Manny Hanny. Remember Manufacturers Hanover? That's the thing. What happened to all these banks when I was growing up? You know, because the 80s were this era of conglomerates and mergers and Larry the Liquidator and things being brought up. And it's nostalgic in a weird way to remember all these things. There's like Bank Leumi. Anybody remember that one? We used to have a Bank Leumi when I was growing up, and we liked it because it seemed to be sort of pro-Israel or was founded by Israelis, or what the hell is the deal with Bank Leumi? What was Bank Leumi? It's kind of unfair to keep Googling for things. Actually, Bank Leumi it is an Israeli bank. We just lost the branch that I grew up with, but it's still there. But all these banks that were happening, there was Anchor. My first job out of school, out of college, was, I was casting about for work. I was either both too lazy and also too proud to go looking for shitty crew work on other people's movies and stuff, of getting up and doing that kind of physical labor rather than making movies of my own. So I got a day job working in mortgage originations at a bank in Rockville Center. It was called Anchor Savings Bank. It was every year's. God, how do banks fail? And I don't mean just in these giant crises when J.P. Morgan is threatened or they have big, terrible scandals. How is it that banks that should know what to do with money, they've basically got a bunch of people putting money in, and then banks should know how to invest, and then you keep rolling. But banks did this for decades. And we're there, and they were part of the neighborhood. They were part of the fabric of where you were. And then suddenly, over the past 20 years, it's like, well, no, this bank is no longer. Oh, this was brought up by this bank for 3 years, and then another bank bought them up, and then this one out of business, but it was taken. It's like, what the hell? And it makes everything so complicated and so ridiculous. And yet, at the same time, there is something to be said for this giant corporatization and globalization of banks, because we've been dealing, and I will not get into specifics, but we've been dealing with a bank near where my wife's parents have lived called Ridgewood Savings Bank. And there's a lot of Ridgewood banks in that area, but not elsewhere in the country. You can do stuff with them online, but it's this giant, old, beautiful building that's in the middle of Queens there. And we've just been trying to deal with these folks with paperwork and bureaucracy and physically having to go to the bank and sign papers and do this and that, which with any other bank or one of these giant monoliths like Citibank or Chase Bank, or now TD Bank seems to be everywhere, where you just go, and it doesn't matter, you go to a branch, any fucking branch, just go in when they're open. But this one is like, nope, you gotta come in, you gotta schlep him, you gotta do that, and it's like, Jesus, why? Because they're old school. And I do sort of get that. I do kind of miss that, of when this branch was opened, and it was a close branch to where my in-laws lived. What they would do, they would physically walk over a couple of blocks, do their banking. They had a passbook. I had a passbook. My first bank out of when I was in junior high school, I had a little passbook, and it was exciting to me. I would go into the bank and I put a little money in, like I was making $2 an hour working at my local library. Literally, like $2.50 an hour, tops. And I would go in and save some money, and then I would see. Because back then you would get something like 8% or 12% interest. And I'd get like 30 cents just by leaving my money alone. And I'd add $1 or $2 or $5 to my passbook. They'd run it through, they'd stamp it. And I'd look at it and I was like, look at that. I deposited this and I made this interest. And it was really kind of exciting to me. It was kind of made me proud that I was saving this ridiculously negligible amount of money. But being mature and putting money away and having my own money, most of which was, birthday money and bar mitzvah money or whatever it was. But still. So I get that. I get that old school idea of, well, it was fine. You had to go, and they didn't have cash machines, and they didn't have this and that. Now this bank is still there. It's got a friggin' coffee machine where you can literally have Starbucks coffee, which is why homeless people go into the bank. You go in there and you're like, who are these people who are here banking? And it's basically they're, probably living on the street, but they know they can go into the bank, go to the machine, and get a free cup of Starbucks coffee with milk, and come and chai. The machine makes chai, which is disgusting in the best of circumstances, but it makes this unbearably sweet, gooey chai tea for free in the bank. I'd rather have 1% higher interest on my money in a bank than have them spend it on a free cup of coffee when I'm there, but okay, it's fine. But it's still one of these really old school, banks, and you walk in there and you see what it must have been 60 years ago, and they have a mural, and it really looks like old Philadelphia and Maryland and New York architecture, like the J.P. Morgan sort of library building things. It's really beautiful and impressive if they don't ruin it. So I get it, but it's just unbelievable that my wife and I, or sometimes just she, have to schlep back into Queens to physically be there at this bank, rather than driving over a quarter mile to a Chase outfit, a TD outfit, to do what we got to do. But it makes me nostalgic for these banks that were there and did their thing, and then just suddenly, boom, they're gone. Like my mom. My mom does her banking. She was doing banking for years at this Lynbrook branch, and then they were brought out and became Washington Mutual, but now they're not Washington Mutual anymore. It's just it's too much. You start to understand why people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s are like, they don't want to program VCRs. It was easier to watch a TV. Or they don't want to figure out how to do this because it's too much. They don't have to change all their passwords and this and move their account from this to this, or suddenly, if you have this stock, you have to sign this and change because this is now being sold to this, and your mortgage, it used to be handled by these people, but remember, the mortgage payments you're making, we're no longer handling. It's like so much every month, every half a year, that happens to us just by the natural course of events, where everything changes so fast all the time in the world that we live in. And we're forced to keep up. We're all on the hamster wheel of updating our passwords, changing our accounts, canceling this, renewing that, figuring out, making sure that we don't leave this, that we're not being charged for this and that we're not getting fees for this. It's just so much, and that is, for no particular reason, that is what sparked in my mind when I see Dry Dock, because I never had money in Dry Dock Savings Bank. But I hear that name, and it's like, oh, it's kind of like there used to be a bank. I think there used to be a bank called the Bowery in New York. Am I wrong about this? Bowery Savings Bank. I just remembered that one. And look, you go to the wiki page, it's beautiful. The Bowery Savings Bank was in New York City, chartered in 1834. By 1980, it had 35 branches in the New York metropolitan area. It was sold in 1992 for only $200 million to Amundsen Company, and now what? Now, it was a Stanford White building, right? Where is it now? Timeline. Converted to Federal Home Savings of America, Bowery Division of Federal Savings Bank. Not this. It pays to save at the Bowery. Not it pays to save at the Federal. The Loan Commission. No, sorry. Not everything new is an improvement. And I know I sound like an old fogey. I am an old fogey. I'm 61 and I have a head cold. I'm this much closer to my casket, for fuck's sake. So, still, dry dock, which is the word of the day on Dave's Big Dictionary here on Dave's Gone By, where it is just about noon Eastern Time. Here I was, I thought I couldn't get through the whole show, and I'm going to go into overtime because we haven't even done our Colorado Limerick, nor have we done our Friends of the Daverhood. So, Friends of the Daverhood, I do enjoy doing this segment because it reminds us of the wonderful guests that have visited our show over the past 22 years. Like today, of course, Adam Nedeff. You're going to want to go on Amazon, you're going to want to go on his Facebook page and buy his books. Adam Nedeff. He's written books about The Gong Show, he's written about Bill Cullen, Alan Ludden, Gene Rayburn, was James, I was going to say Henry James, but Dennis James, of course. He's also written about a little bit about wrestling too, all these things about game shows. He is the maven, Adam Nedeff, Nedeff, and we thank him for being our latest new friend of the Daverhood. But he was just on today's program. Who are folks who have been on this show in months and years past, and what are they up to? For example, hey, congratulations to our musical friend Carolyn Montgomery. She just won a Bistro Award, which was co-founded by our other friend, Sherry Eaker, of Backstage Newspaper, formerly of Backstage Newspaper. But anyway, she won a Bistro Cabaret Award for a tribute show. So congratulations to Carolyn Montgomery for that. And hey, congratulations also to Becca Kidwell. She has been nominated for a MAC Award. That's the other cabaret awards. There's the Bistros, and then there's the MAC, the Manhattan Association of Cabarets and Clubs. So Becca Kidwell is nominated for Musical Comedy Performer. Yay, Becca. So rooting for you on that. And one more congratulations. Congrats to Jeff Gurian, a comedian and MC. When you talk about someone holding two different jobs, he's made his mark in that field and knows a ton of comedians. He's sort of a comedian's comedian. But his day job is being a dentist. And he has been profiled just this week in a website, in a magazine called Dentistry Today, for his work advancing pain-free dentistry. He's developed this technique and stuff that makes it, God bless him. God bless him for doing that. Jeff Gurian, I started reading the article, and there's a quote there from Jeff that Cindy Adams, the columnist from the New York Post, picked up on. This is kind of great. Quote, "I make people laugh to see if they have any teeth missing." So there's a quote from our friend Jeff Gurian. Congratulations for being an honored dentist. And that is the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth. One more person to congratulate. Congratulations to musician friend Steve Forbert, who just won a College Radio Legend Award. Yeah, basically for being the kind of music that was very important for college radio to play back in the day, to distinguish itself as college radio rather than commercial radio and so forth. So he's very proud to get that, and it was presented to him by a fella I know, Norm Pruslin, who was at the SUNY radio station that I was on for a little bit for many, many years ago. Anyway, congrats to Steve Forbert. Condolences, though. I do want to send out condolences to our another musical friend, Daniel Kaner, who lost his mom. She was 89 years old last Sunday. So our heart goes out to him. And a refuah shlema, a complete and full healing and get better soon to our friend Nancy Redman. Nancy Redman, a comedian, a playwright, an actress as well. She was just in a show, and she broke her hip, right? She was actually worried that she broke both of her hips, but she broke only one, and she's getting surgery for that. She just got it like a day or two ago. I hope it went well. I hope she's on the path to recovery, because it ain't a fun thing. So, definitely wishing her the best. I know it was a bit of a shock when we did our New Year's show just a couple of months ago that our theater friend, Eva Heinemann, had hips, or was it knee surgery or hip surgery, and she was just going through, a rough rehab, and we actually literally talked to her in the rehab place. So I hope she's doing great too. Anyway, let's get to some of our friends who are doing things, as well as being congratulated. For example, happy 85th birthday to Judy Collins. I'm not sure if it's right now, but she's doing an 85th birthday concert tonight at Town Hall in New York City, and it's being hosted by our friend Sophie B. Hawkins, another singer and songwriter. So yay to both of them, and go see them. I mean, if you've never seen Judy Collins in person, she's 85 years old and still performing. What the hell are you waiting for? On Tuesday, this Tuesday, March 11th, Broadway will be dimming its lights at 6:45 p.m. for the loss of our friend Linda Lavin. I don't know why it takes so long for these things to be agreed upon and to happen. Linda Lavin passed like a month ago, and then suddenly Broadway's like, okay, let's remember her. We'll dim the lights, but they do, so it's good. So the lights will dim for about a minute on Broadway at 6:45 this Tuesday in Linda Lavin's honor. I want to let you know that Seth Rudetsky is hosting a one-night benefit that same night, where they took the musical Grease and reworked it and updated it for modern times, so they're calling it Vape, the musical. Rachel Dratch is in it, so gotta love her. So it's at Town Hall. It's a one night and it's a benefit, and it's happening on this Tuesday evening. Now, we just mentioned Becca Kidwell. She's nominated for this award. You can see her. You can see how funny she is as a musical comedian. She's at Don't Tell Mama this coming, actually, let's see, the 16th. Oh, it's actually next week. It's Saturday the 16th. Oopsies. But hey, no harm in getting an early jump on that. So congratulations to Becca Kidwell. Want to remind you that Danny Burston is in a wonderful revival of the Broadway musical Gypsy, playing at the Majestic Theater. Tanya Pinkins is one of the rotating cast members in the Joy Behar play My First Ex-Husband, which is playing at M-Mac on West 60th Street. Aladdin on Broadway has music by Alan Menken at the New Amsterdam Theater. Little Shop of Horrors off-Broadway also has music by Alan Menken. K.T. Sullivan spends her Tuesday evenings playing at the Algonquin. Vince Stradano and the Nighthawks, they play Monday nights, 2 shows at Birdland. And of course, Tim Caruso's cast party every Monday night at Birdland. Get your tickets at birdlandjazz.com. Michael Garin plays piano at the Roxy Hotel Tuesdays through Saturday evenings. And remember, if you go on Michael Garin's Facebook page, he usually live streams him tickling the ivories and taking requests. So yay for that. Seth Bisson-Hirsch hosts his talent showcase on Tuesday nights at Don't Tell Mama. Want to remind you that David Sheward writes theater reviews for culturaldaily.com and for a marvelous and redone website called totaltheater.com that I happen to publish. Totaltheater.com, it's been around for 20 years. We had some terrible trouble with it a few months ago. Basically reworked it, lost a ton of content, but we're putting up new and some older content all the time. It looks really good. TotalTheater.com, and you can read David Sheward's Broadway and off-Broadway reviews right there. Vicky Quaddy does her shows Late Night Catechism and Are You Smarter Than Your 8th Grade Nun? And I'm guessing she's doing Easter Bingo or some kind of Easter-related shows out there in Chicago at the Greenhouse Theater and other venues nearby. And who else? Charlie Gross and Leslie Hoban Blake co-host Two on the Aisle, episodes of which and also excerpts of which you can watch on YouTube. Shout out to my friend Evan Seplow of StageBuddy.com. Shout out, of course, to the beloved Dr. Demento. Speaking of 85-year-olds or I think he's 83 or 85 years old. He's having kind of an open birthday celebration lunch. So if you happen to be in LA, I mean, I wish I could go. He's in Los Angeles at like his favorite deli somewhere. Dr. Demento is saying, hey, we're going to feat Dr. Demento for his birthday and hang with him and buy him lunch. And this is posted on Facebook. You can look for it. Go give tribute. Go give obeisance. And remember that Dr. Demento is still making Dr. Demento shows at drdemento.com. Wow. Can't do better than that to end this segment, our friends of the Daverhood. Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, we've done so much on this episode of the show. We've had our wonderful interview with Adam Nedeff. We've had we've had Greeley Times. We did StoryTime with the dragon who had the measles. We had our what else did we just do? We did Friends of the Daverhood. We did Bunion Watch. I showed you my bunions, for gosh sakes. Are we done? We're almost done, but not quite, because don't forget, we also have our Colorado Limerick of the Damned. This is because, as I mentioned, my wife and I lived in Colorado for many years, and I took it into my head to write a poem about as many places in Colorado as I possibly could. And because they were limerick form, they were short, silly, hopefully funny, but also, being written by me, disgusting, evil, tasteless, sick. You throw the adjective out. So, we're doing another one. I keep writing them. I've got more than 300 now. And today, we go to Bridle Dale, Colorado. Bridle, B-R-I-D-L-E. Not like the bride, or, the woman getting married, but the horse. A horse of a different nature. So, I'll tell you a little bit about Bridledale, Colorado, and then I'll read you a disgusting poem. Kind of disgusting. Not dirty, not naughty, not reprehensible, just gross. My poem this week, our Colorado Limerick of the Damned.
A limerick is a comic verse of 5 lines, in which lines 1, 2, and 5 will end with words that rhyme, and likewise verses 3 and 4 also end with words that rhyme. So this is a limerick. Rocky Mountain,
Thank you, Christine Lavin, Colorado, Limerick of the Damned. Basically, they're gross poems about all these different places in Colorado, and today we go to Bridle Dale. It's a neighborhood in the Arvada area of Colorado, which is in central northern Colorado, not that far from Greeley, where I used to live, and it's in Jefferson County. This is kind of cool. One website is specifically for Bridledale Undevelopment Corps. Not Development Corps, Bridledale Undevelopment Corps. Their idea is this is a place where they want to make sure that a bunch of open land is not turned into paradise being paid for parking lots. It's not turned into stores and not turned into playgrounds and not even turned into public parks. You just kind of leave it. Let the grass grow. Let the trees grow. Let it be a place that remains wild and natural and fairly undeveloped. So, as I say, it's a place, this particular website promotes a place where people can keep their horses if they don't have a large property of their own. So basically you can bring the horses, stable them there, have the play, and then go out and take them and play with them and then bring them back. Cool. Back in the 1970s, the corporation wanted to make sure that some of the land in that area of Arvada would not go commercial, will not be developed, right? It should be for stables and pastures and open greenery and land. Gotta love that. So it's gotta be in this gorgeous, gorgeous area. Not that far from the Denver metro area either, for example. We're not talking about miles and miles and miles away from development. It's this little alcove, this little area. Love it. Love this idea. And yet, I wrote this really tasteless poem for Bridledale, Colorado, our Colorado Limerick of the damned. I share with you a suicidal tale that killed a very rich and idle male. One morning, as a goof, he jumped straight off a roof. His guts hit every car in Bridledale. If you have complaints, and I'm sure you do, please send them to davesgoneby@aol.com. Dave's Gone By, the name of the show, but no apostrophe. Dave's Gone By at AOL.com. I try and read every single piece of email I get. You can also message me on our Facebook page, the one you're watching now, unless you're watching a rerun, or you can leave a message under the show on our Facebook comment feed. Either way, whatever way you want to get in touch with me, please do. Dave's Gone By at AOL.com. You can also follow our Twitter feed, Radio Dave 2, plus our Instagram page, david.lefkowitz. A lot of this stuff is just telling you what's going to be on an upcoming show. How we get our word out. If I had more time, if I had a staff, I would be doing these little videos and getting on TikTok. I just don't. But maybe one day. Anywho, that's the way to follow the show, as well as making sure that you check our Facebook page for upcoming stuff. You check our main page, davesgoneby.com, for all the archives. If this show's been 3 hours and 15 minutes long, maybe you haven't been able to sit there and watch this whole time, but you want to see some parts that you missed, or some parts over again, or you know somebody who loves game shows and they would really enjoy the conversation with Adam Nedeff, or you have someone whose kids are unvaccinated and maybe you want to hear them read the story of the dragon who had the measles. Whichever it is, soon as we can, we upload the episode of the show onto our Facebook page. It's sort of automatic there, onto davesgoneby.com, onto archive.org, to make sure that it's there a year from now, 10 years from now, hopefully 50 years after I'm dead. You will still be able to access this program for whatever reason. Just to show, if it's the end of the world as we know it and you feel fine, and you're wondering why God chose to destroy the earth, and why China is bombing us, and we're bombing Russia, and North Korea is bombing everybody, and it's our last days on the planet, and you start to wonder, why did God turn against us? Why did civilization, eat its own tail like the Ouroboros and basically churn itself into nothing? And then you start watching an episode of Dave's Gone By, and you go, oh, okay, I get it. We've devolved completely into this no reason to keep civilization going. If this is what was considered entertainment back in 2005 or 2020 or something, it's just, there it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. So, davesgoneby.com, where all the archives reside. So, this concludes the 979th episode of the Dave's Gone By show. We are, of course, going to do our 980th. There we go. Whether it's going to be next Saturday, I can't necessarily say. I'm thinking probably yes, but if we go heading back into Manhattan, which I honestly don't know or if other things will come up, there's a possibility that it won't be next week, but at the moment I'm thinking probably next Saturday. We'll be here, same bat time, same batty channel, 9 to noon or thereabouts on our Facebook page, Dave's Gone By, with the 980th episode of this program. So, yeah, all you got to do is check our Facebook page and our main page to find out. So, I just want to thank so much one more time Adam Nedeff for being with us in the Daverhood. Go buy his books. They're on Amazon. He's written about The Gong Show and Dennis James and about Gene Rayburn and about Alan Ludd, excuse me, and about Monty Hall. I didn't even get to ask about Monty Hall. And, of course, The Gong Show and Chuck Barris and all his other work. And watch the shows that he's involved in, because that allows him to get work and keep working. So, thank you again to Adam Nedeff. Thank you all so much for watching the show, for telling other people about the program, for being supporters of the Daverhood. Thank you to my greatest supporter of all the love of my life, my darling and adorable wife, who could not be here with me in person, but is definitely with me in spirit, and I'm with her in spirit as she's dealing with the bureaucracy she's dealing with. What else? Who else can I thank? Well, just thank you to all of you out there who are supportive of all the things that I do. My father-in-law, my mom, my family, my cousins, etc., and so forth. It's been a shitty year for pretty much everybody. Everybody says when I say that I'm not having the most wonderful year, they think I'm talking about politics. They think that I'm one of these people like, well, my God, they were elected as president. It's like, that's part of it, but they've got no clue. They got no what's been happening. I mean, you guys know that I lost a cousin. I lost a couple of cousins in fairly short succession and some other stuff going on. It's been shit. It's been a year. And one of the things that gets me through is doing this show. This allows me on some level to vent, to enjoy my life a little, to be creative, to share with you, to have someone that I can spew at and try and be funny to, which is the main goal of my life, is trying to make people, give them a grin, make them think outside the box a little, shock them a little, and make them laugh, really more than anything else. So if I even have the belief on some level that a couple of people are out there getting a chuckle over what I'm telling them, that helps make a difficult week a lot less difficult. It really is true. So thank you for being there. Thank you for being in the Daverhood, and we'll see you next time with a 980th episode of Dave's Gone By.
Dave's gone by. Dave's gone by. Dave's gone by. Dave's gone
by. Pooey, are you okay? I'm hungry. What you got? See you next time.